Faites l'appel, s'il vous plaît, Madame le greffier.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier. Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent.
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Brelade.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de la Trinité.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Martin. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Clément.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Grouville.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Ouen. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Sauveur.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Southern.
Présent.
Madame le député Labbé.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Tadier. Monsieur le député Luce.
Présent.
Madame le député Dublé.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Morel.
Présent.
Madame le député Lehegara.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Ayer.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Alves. Madame le député Gardner. Monsieur le député
Présent.
Monsieur le député Farnham.
Présent.
Madame le député Moore. Monsieur le député Mézec.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Bailiff.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Coles.
Présent.
Madame le député Poré.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Miles.
Présente.
Madame le député Scott.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Renouf.
Présent.
Madame le député Curtis. Madame le député Feltham.
Présente.
Madame le député Binet.
Présente.
Madame le député Jeune.
Présente.
Madame le député Miller.
Présente.
Madame le député Howell. Monsieur le député Binet. Monsieur le député Ferry.
Présent.
Madame le député Kovac.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Curtis. Madame le député Ward.
Présente.
Madame le député Wilson.
Présente.
Madame le député Stevenson.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Andrews.
Monsieur le doyen.
Notre aide soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait les cieux et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi les gouvernements et les puissances de la terre, pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton saint nom. Nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir les cœurs et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, de la conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit, que toute leur délibération est accompagnée de ta bénédiction. Réussisse au bien-être et au soulagement du peuple, qu'il t'a plu de commettre à leurs soins. Car nous t'en prions au nom et par le mérite de ton Fils bien-aimé Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné de t'invoquer en disant: Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite en la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonnons nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous envoie pas en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal, car à toi la règne, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Martin.
Sir, can I, apologies. Can I ask that the constable be excused as she has a funeral early this morning?
I was content to mark the connétable excusez. Excusez.
Monsieur le député Tadier.
Présent.
Madame le député Alves.
Can I ask for Deputy Alves be excused? She's attending a medical appointment with a family member, so excused as care for a family member, if that's possible. Thank you,
I
sir.
was content to mark Deputy Alves excusez. Excusez.
Madame le député Moore.
Elle est malade.
Je jure que Madame le député Moore est tellement indisposée qu'elle ne peut pas assister aux états sans exposer sa santé. Madame le Deputy Howell.
Defo.
Monsieur le Deputy Curtis.
Defo. Les États sont constitués. On behalf of members, I should like to welcome His Excellency to the Chamber this morning. Members are aware that as a result of Mark Temple KC's appointment to the role of Deputy Bailiff, a vacancy arose in the office of Attorney General. A process for filling that post was agreed with the Lord Chancellor and Secretary of State for Justice. That process involved an open advertisement of the vacancy, 2 written exercises and a formal interview following a series of consultations. The selection panel was chaired by myself, and the panel included Lieutenant Bailiff Jurat Jane Ronge, Jersey Appointments Commissioner Mr Simon Nash, and Senior Judge of the Court of Appeal, Claire Montgomery, King's Counsel. I'm pleased to announce that the successful applicant was Matthew Jowitt, King's Counsel. The present Solicitor General and His Majesty has graciously accepted the recommendation he should be appointed the next Attorney General of Jersey. He will take office on Monday, the 2nd of March. Moving on to the, yes, Deputy Binet.
Sir, could I please lift the defo on Deputy Howell?
I was content to raise the defo. Defo is raised. Now move on to the consolidated order paper. There are a number of subordinate enactments under B. A number of matters have been presented or laid under C. The following matters have been lodged under D. P65, Draft Assisted Dying Law Amendment, lodged on the 5th of January by Deputy Barbara Ward. P104, Draft Elections Amendment Number 2 Law Amendment, lodged on the 7th of January by the Comité des Connétables. P112, Draft Alcohol Licensing Law Amendment, lodged on the 7th of January by the Comité des Connétables. P116, Future Approach to Personal Cannabis Use in Jersey, lodged on the 19th of December last by the Minister for Health and Social Services. P117, extension to Jersey of the PCT, Hague Agreement, Madrid Protocol and Nice Agreement, lodged on the 22nd of December last by the Minister for External Relations. P118, Draft Elections Amendment Commencement Act, lodged on the 23rd of December by the Privileges and Procedures Committee. P119, Draft Elections Consequential Amendments Amendment Regulations, lodged on the 23rd of December by the Privileges and Procedures Committee. P120, Draft Fire Safety Tall Residential Buildings Regulations, lodged on the 23rd of December by the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs. P121, Draft Heritage Law, lodged on the 24th of December by the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. P112, Draft Treaties Law, lodged on the 24th of December by the Chief Minister. P1 of 2026, Draft Employment and Discrimination Law, Discrimination Tribunal Amendment Regulations, lodged on the 9th of January by the Minister for Social Security. P2, Social Security Health and Christmas Bonus Amendment Regulations, lodged on the 9th of January by the Minister for Social Security. P3, Draft Customs and Excise Amendment Law, lodged on the 12th of July by the Minister for Treasury and Resources. P4, Draft Employment and Discrimination Amendment Law, lodged on the 13th of January by the Minister for Social Security. P5, Draft Sexual Offences Amendment Law, lodged on the 13th of January by the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs. P6, Draft Harassment and Stalking Law, lodged on the 13th of January by the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs. P7, Draft Domestic Abuse Amendment Law, lodged on the 13th of January by the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs. P8, Draft Crime Strangulation Law, lodged on the 13th of January by the Minister of Justice and Home Affairs. P9, draft Crime Public Order Amendment Law, lodged on the 13th of July by the Minister of Justice and Home Affairs. There is nothing under E. Under F, we come to appointments of members of the Bailiff Consultative Panel, this being necessary as the terms of office of currently elected members of this panel has expired. There are a number of ex officio members on this panel, including the Chief Minister, the Chair of PPC, the Treasury and Resources Minister, and the Chair of the Comité. The Assembly needs to consider electing up to 5 members of this panel via, if there is a contest, secret ballot. Nominations did not need to be made in advance of the meeting, but each nomination needs to be seconded. Present members of the panel may stand again. The reason that we have this process at this rather strange time is that members are currently selected for a 3-year term. That will change after the election at the suggestion of PPC to a 4-year term so as to coincide with the parliamentary term. Do I have any nominations for members of the Bailiff's Consultative Panel? Deputy Rose Binet.
Yes, sir. Please could I nominate Deputy Labby of Gribble and St Martin?
Thank you. Is that seconded? Thank you very much. Deputy Balash.
May I nominate Deputy Ferry, sir?
Thank you very much. Is that nomination seconded?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Deputy Tadia.
Yeah, I nominate Deputy Kovacs, please, sir.
Yes. Is that nomination seconded? Thank you. Deputy Morell.
Yes, sir, to nominate Deputy Scott, sir.
Deputy Scott. Is that nomination seconded? Yes. Thank you very much. Four so far. We don't need 5, but we can have an election if you like. But is there any more nominations?
May I nominate Deputy Gardner?
Deputy Gardner, is that nomination seconded? Yes. So we now have 5 nominations. Are there any more nominations? Thank you very much. Accordingly, I can announce that Deputy Labby, Deputy Ferry, Deputy Kovacs, Deputy Scott and Deputy Gardner have been elected members of that panel. There are no matters under G or H. Under I, there are a number of written questions to which responses have been provided. And we now come to oral questions. There are 14 oral questions, which amounts to no more than 10 minutes per question. And the first question, Deputy Miles will put to the Minister for Social Security. Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise what action, if any, is being taken to address the funding situation of the Jersey Employment Trust to ensure that the vocational training services provided to islanders with disabilities and long-term health conditions can continue?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I can confirm that following positive discussions with the Jersey Employment Trust, I can confirm that I have offered some stabilisation funding to the Trust in addition to its core funding. So it will receive the same funding in 2026 as it did in 2025, whilst we continue the work that we had started in 2025 to work collaboratively to develop a business case for a sustainable future funding model for the organisation. There are no anticipated changes to the provision of the vocational training service.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. The recent media coverage reflects a genuine lack of confidence in the Minister's handling of this situation. Does the Minister regret her decision, and will she apologise to those affected for causing genuine distress?
Minister.
Sir, I think it's important to note that I would consider the petition that was circulated to be factually incorrect. The petition was asking me to not undertake an action that I hadn't taken. At each point in the discussions with the JET, I have sought to be truthful and honest with them about public finances and the ongoing financial situation that we face. At every opportunity, I have given the Trust more money where I could and been open about the collaborative work that we would need to do in order to put together a business case for any additional secure ongoing funding in the future. I've also been open with them that I think it is better that we have sustainable funding models for organisations such as the Trust that would lead potentially, in my view, to multi-year funding agreements so that we don't end up in this situation on a year-by-year basis. It was not my decision to go to the media. We were still in ongoing discussions, and my position was that we had come to an arrangement with the Trust just before Christmas, and I had offered them some additional money at that time so that we could avoid them getting into a position where they were putting their staff at risk of redundancy. And I think it's regrettable that all staff were put at risk of redundancy.
Deputy Bailiff.
Yes, so the Minister initially, when this was brought to, it became a newspaper story, accused the Jersey Employment Trust of overspending. She then said she had a duty to look after taxpayers' funding, presumably because Jersey Employment Trust weren't in some way. Then she blamed them for failing to provide data. It sounds like she wants now credit for finding the top-up funding after all, but it's a bit like planting a bomb and then expecting credit for defusing it. Can she explain why she spent 3 days defending the indefensible?
Minister.
So I think when it comes to expenditure of public money, it's important that we use consistent language across the piece. I was very clear and open with the Jersey Employment Trust about what the budgeted funds were, both in last year's budget and this year's budget. The Trust came to me at the end of 2024, towards the end of 2024, and said that it would not be able to work within that budget. So we did agree a planned overspend on that budget. That's exactly the same language that we use when we refer to overspends in health, for example, which are also providing essential services. And in exactly the same way as what we've done with the health budget this year, I used an underspend that I had within my budget to ensure that JET could continue its services. I've done exactly the same thing this year, and I think it is important that when we're talking about services that are wholly funded by government, we maintain consistent language around that so that we know exactly what we're talking about.
Supplementary.
So the fact remains that the Minister spent 3 days trying to defend the position she's arrived at. She initially staked out and then finally has come to a different view. As my first question stands, why did it take so long when the answer appeared so obvious to so many people?
Minister.
So had the Deputy undertook to have any form of conversation with me, he would know that I've been entirely consistent with my views and my conversations with the Trust for the past 2 years. It is my view that we need to work collaboratively with the Trust. It is my ambition that we work with them to ensure that services are coordinated across government departments and with the Trust on a person-centred basis. That is how we should be delivering disability and inclusion services, and I'm committed to that, and I maintain my commitment to that and collaboratively working with the Trust.
Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. It's obviously important that funding has been found for the immediate term, but there's a long-term issue here that's a very important one. Will the Minister summarise the differences between the proposed new agreement her department was seeking to sign with JET and the existing one, and explain what happens to that contract now? Is she still expecting that contract to be signed?
Minister.
So we've had very productive conversations with the Trust over the past few days. We will shortly be issuing a joint media statement with the Trust. I don't believe in sticking plaster politics, and that's exactly why I undertook to have the conversations with the Trust over the past few years that I have been doing. That's exactly why I've been providing stabilisation funding to the Trust so that we could come to a position where we've got a clear business case about any gap in funding need so that that could be put forward and we can make sure that we're acting with absolute responsibility over public funds, we're being accountable, we're being fair. The Trust is not the only organisation that comes to ministers with requests for additional funding, and it's really important that we treat all organisations fairly and that we have clear processes in place for that.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir, thank you. And what assessment has been undertaken of the future demand for JET, for example, by looking at current school cohorts? And what reassurance can the Minister provide for these future potential clients that support will be available to them?
Minister.
Working collaboratively with JET has been first and foremost in what we're doing. Also working collaboratively across government. So we've been working with our colleagues in the Health Department and our colleagues in SIPES on this. This has been a truly collaborative approach. It is obviously going to take longer now than what I'd anticipated at the beginning of last year. And I would hope that by mid this year we'll be in a much better place and that we will have resolved some of the data sharing issues. Again, I will reiterate, it's really important that we take a person-centred approach and make sure that individuals have coordinated services that they need.
We have questions from Deputy Scott, Deputy Talier, Deputy Balash, and then final supplementary from Deputy Miles. Deputy Scott.
Sir, I was going to ask a question about the data sharing, but I noticed that that's been mentioned, so I will withdraw the question.
Okay. Deputy Talier.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Whilst some former ministers seem to wish to use this as a political football, which I think is particularly distasteful, sir, could I ask the minister whether in future she thinks that there is scope for more cross-governmental funding? She's mentioned cross-governmental working, but actually the work that JET does in partnership with government is highly valuable, not just for her department, but for economic development, for health, as she's mentioned, and has educational benefits too. Is it possible that future governments need to work on a more realistic sum, as she said, so that top-up grants are not needed, but that each department, which ultimately is benefiting and should be supporting this, it is actually contributing its fair share too?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Yes, collaborative working across government is absolutely key to making sure that we are providing the most efficient, effective and the right services to people. I've been working collaboratively with the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning and the Minister for Health. I would more than welcome more ministers being part of that conversation, including the Minister for Economic Development. But I would hope that colleagues know that I do put collaborative working front and centre. I think that's the only way that we're going to achieve the most efficient and effective government, and at the end of the day, the best services for people.
Supplementary. Deputy Balash.
So my understanding is that one of the difficulties faced by the Minister was an inability to obtain important information from the Trust. Will the Minister, in seeking to arrive at some final solution with the Trust, ensure that this information is obtained?
Minister.
Yes, I think it's important to approach sharing of data sensitively, and I will do that. I think what's important to remember in the cases that we're talking about in relation to the Jersey Employment Trust is that appropriate data sharing may be different for different people. We will endeavour to work with the Trust to ensure that we, as I said, are taking a person-centred approach. to ensure that people have the right services that they need and that we're providing that in a sensitive manner. I do recognise that some of the people that use the services of the Trust may not wish to go through government services, but by the same token, what I also want to ensure is that our own government services are as inclusive as possible and people aren't being bounced from service to service. So I will indeed be making sure that that's not happening.
Supplementary? Final supplementary, Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. I thank the Minister for her answers. This situation highlights the difficulty with the Minister having responsibility for policy around disability and inclusion and equally acting as the gatekeeper of funding. Does the Minister agree that policy should transfer to another ministry so that organisations delivering services for government are not held to ransom?
Minister.
Sir, I have not and never would hold any organisation to ransom. That is simply not the way that I operate. It's not the way that I work. And I'm actually quite disappointed to think that the Deputy would consider that I would act in such a way.
Thank you, Minister. Question 2 is put by Deputy Catherine Curtis to the Minister for Children and Families. Deputy Curtis.
Thank you, sir. Further to the ministerial response to the scrutiny review, what protection do children in Jersey have from online harms? Will the Minister advise whether ministers have met local telecoms providers and detail the next steps to be taken?
Minister.
So I answer this on the Minister's behalf.
Yes.
I thank the Deputy for the question and for agreeing that I take this answer. I chaired a group of relevant ministers who met with the telecommunication providers on the 18th of December, and the focus of the discussion was understanding what steps each of the providers were taking to support parents to protect their children from online harms. The wider global factors that represent challenges were also considered, and it was acknowledged that there are different responses from different jurisdictions to these threats. The meeting was viewed as positive and helpful, with a commitment to ensure regular contact is maintained between government and the telecommunication providers going forward. So.
Supplementary?
I'm pleased to hear there's progress on this matter, but internet service providers told the panel that they had no legal basis to block or filter dangerous content, as there is in other jurisdictions, because Jersey has no law similar to the Digital Economy Act 2017. Can the Deputy say whether there is a plan to bring in such a legal requirement?
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for that follow-up question. The telecom providers told us of the practical steps that parents can take, everything from having certain smartphones that can have restrictions placed on them, to home routers that can be filtered to remove harmful content before it gets into the home. But of course, these things have to be done by the individual, and training has to be given to show parents or guardians how to do that for a phone that they're giving to a third party. So the question, of course, is one of legislation, and as the Deputy will know, we've agreed to do a gap analysis on the relevant legislation to see where legislation can be improved and enhanced in this area. So.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. And thank you to the Assistant Minister for response. As legislation will take a long time, and from the answer understood that responsibility put back on the parents, which is important. Would the Assistant Minister advise if telecom providers made any formal commitments what they would do to increase the safety?
Assistant Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for that question. Yes, indeed, the telecom providers told us that at point of sale, what they endeavour to do is to engage with anyone who's buying a phone, particularly for a third party, and offer training in this area. and highlight what the issues are, highlight the online harms. And of course, this extends to vulnerable people as well as children. So there is lots of good work which is being done by the individual telecom providers because they recognise that this is an issue. And of course, they recognise that this is part of their industry and something that they have control over at point of sale. So yes, they do undertake good training and they do highlight the issues. So.
Supplementary.
Thank you. And would the Minister also advise if it would be any clear action plan be published or prepared where it will be a clear responsibility divided what government would do and what providers would need to do going forward before legislation coming into place?
This is the Minister.
Yes, thank you. So I think this will be part of the ongoing work that the ministerial group will be looking into to see where the delineation lies, you know, what government can do and what the providers can do. So.
Deputy Renouf.
So the Minister referenced a gap analysis and a ministerial group that is going to trundle into action. Could he say when the gap analysis will be complete and what will be delivered in this term of government?
This is the Minister.
Thank you. So we're not trundling into action. We are steaming forth very fast into action. So this ministerial group has been set up. It has got a terms of reference. And of course, that is something that will be considered as we move forward. We accept that there's only months and weeks left, but we will start to lay a solid pathway for the next administration to continue the work that we have started. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
So could the Minister confirm that he does not expect any substantive actions to take place during this course, the term of this government?
This is the Minister.
Not at all, sir. We are doing work around the area of the data protection framework to increase individuals' rights to have harmful content removed. So there will be some final pieces of legislation put into place, hopefully before the end of this term, but there will also be a clear pathway for new legislation that needs to be put into action.
Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. And I note there is different legislation coming from various ministers tackling online harms. I wanted to understand how this is going to be applied in schools, given that children who are below the age of criminal responsibility. Will these telecoms measures be enough, or do we need to actually change the culture in our schools and not be over-reliant on technology?
This is the Minister.
Yes, I think this is a multi-pronged approach. Part of it is technological solutions, part of it is an education piece, and part of it is where the responsibilities lie. So there's no one single answer to this threat to children and young people and vulnerable people. And it's something that we do have to take seriously and use all the resources that we can to counteract the threats.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. And I think the use of technology in schools, some of it is completely necessary. Some of it is because teachers are, I think, overworked. Would the Minister agree as part of this work to look at that in the whole and look at all of the cultural factors around it as well, so that we are actually getting to the root of the problem and that teachers have sufficient time and planning time and are able to teach and not have to fall back on technology?
This is the Minister.
Yeah, I can't disagree with those sentiments, sir.
St Saviour.
Thank you, sir. I think the Assistant Minister is very much on the right track with this, sir. In the short term, there are various apps that can be used, such as Net Nanny and other things which do screen out harmful content. Maybe it's possible for most schools to send out a letter to parents. Would you agree to your son or daughter have their phones have this app applied, and maybe somebody from the tech department could visit schools and apply these apps in the short term until the full policy is developed, sir? Does the Minister not agree?
This is the Minister.
Yeah, thank you, sir. And I explained earlier that there are lots of technological solutions that are being sought at the moment. Many of them are at our disposal now. All they need to be is downloaded onto those phones. And of course, we need to make sure that when something like a net nanny is put on the phone, of course, it's not circumvented by the young person. So, you know, proper controls need to be put in place and monitored as well. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary? Final supplementary, Deputy Catherine Curtis.
Thank you, sir. Ministers did not agree with the panel's recommendation to have a strategy on online harms, and I expect there will be a long period of time before the gap analysis is complete. So is the Deputy concerned that Jersey is becoming an outlier compared to other jurisdictions when it comes to protection of children? And what does this say for our reputation?
Assistant Minister.
Thank you, sir. I don't think we're an outlier. I think this is a problem that lots of jurisdictions have woken up to. You know, we are doing all the work that we can to make sure that we move in the right direction. And I don't think I can say much more than that, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Assistant Minister. Question 3, Deputy Andrews will put to the Minister for Treasury and Resources. Deputy Andrews.
Thank you, sir. In her capacity as shareholder representative and in view of the outcome of McLeod v. the Channel Islands Cooperative Society Limited in December 2025, will the Minister advise whether consideration has been or will be given to the appropriateness of the current chair of the Jersey Development Company remaining in post?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I feel some discomfort that this is a matter of public debate in this way. But in the first instance, the Board of States of Jersey Development Company is best placed to assess the appropriateness of its current chair remaining in post. However, since the judgment itself is subject to appeal, we should allow the legal process to take its course before reaching any final decision. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary?
Yes, please, sir. Does the Minister agree with me that it would be appropriate for the chair to step down until the appeal has concluded? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
No, I don't. As I say, it's a matter for the board. I have had preliminary discussions with the board and asking for their view. They are best placed to make that decision, and I leave it there, sir. Again, the legal process has to take its course.
Thank you, Minister. Question 4, Deputy Stevenson will put to the Chief Minister. Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chief Minister provide an update on the government's plans regarding a Jersey Public Services Ombudsperson or alternative independent complaints process, including a timetable for implementation?
Chief Minister.
Yes, thank you, sir. Deputy Scott was commissioned to lead this work and will publish her findings shortly, recommending a roadmap for establishing a Jersey Public Service Ombudsperson with a broad remit. Before this can be implemented, some further work is required to refine the Ombudsperson's remit and potential costs to ensure it provides the appropriate service for Jersey and the maximum impact and value for money. So I understand Deputy Scott will be recommending setting up an ombudsman with a broad scope covering a wide range of public services, including coverage of relevant arm's length bodies. So, thank you.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. And so I think the conclusion of that was that an ombudsperson will be set up and a roadmap for establishing it will be set out. Is the Chief Minister able to answer the second part of the first question, which was a timetable for implementation? Will those proposals be brought to this State's Assembly before the election, and when does he expect the ombudsperson to be in place?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. The Deputy will remember the budget debate where we set aside some money for funding the work that's going on now, sir. The short answer is the legislation won't be in time, delivered in time to be considered by this Assembly, but I anticipate that a lot of the work will be done, sir, to pass on to the new Assembly.
So it's interesting that this work won't be completed before the election. Isn't it the case that this is because his government is rather split, in fact hopelessly split on this? The Treasury Minister made a statement in the budget debate regarding the establishment of an ombudsperson along the lines of "over my dead body." the government is split on this. Has the Chief Minister held any meetings to get around the apparently irreconcilable positions within his government?
Chief Minister.
I don't recall anybody using the phrase "over my dead body," sir. But the government is not hopelessly split, I know. The Deputy has improved his rhetorical delivery considerably over this term. So no, we don't all support it for various reasons, but we are doing the work as outlined in the answer to my question. So we have made progress on this, and ultimately, when the legislation is brought to the Assembly, it will be for the Assembly to decide.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. When I made the point about over my dead body, I think I saw the Treasury Minister nodding assent, so it was not too far right of the mark. Will the Chief Minister accept my congratulations for having played this one in such a way as to make sure that he's kept kicking it into the long grass until such time as it can be timed out and not be something which has to be dealt with during this term of government, which would have indeed exposed the splits within his government?
I'm not sure that...
No, sir,
really,
I won't accept
sure,
the Deputy's
Minister,
congratulations on this
I'm not sure
occasion.
I'm not sure that question complies with standing orders, because the question should not be framed primarily so as to convey information rather than... Sorry, a question shall not be framed primarily so as to convey information rather than seek it or convey a particular point of view. You were really just... it was a rhetorical question, wasn't it, effectively? You weren't asking for information, you were saying, well, this is what I think is happening.
I was asking whether the Chief Minister would accept
Agree
my
with your opinion.
congratulations.
Well,
I'd be happy to accept his congratulations on many other issues, but not on this one, sir.
all right. Consultative St Mary.
Thank you, sir. This matter has been raised in quarterly hearings with of the Corporate Services Panel, and we had hoped to have received the report by the end of, well, certainly during November. In one of his replies, the Chief Minister did say that the report would cover cost analysis, and could he therefore please confirm that the report will indeed go into that, and whilst accepting that cost is an important factor, that the overriding factor in deciding whether the Ombudsman should proceed or not is the administration of justice, which appears not to be in play at the moment by the complaints panel. Thank you.
Chief Minister.
Well, sir, a cost-benefit analysis has assessed the projected costs of the policy options. The preferred ombudsperson model needs to be refined to ensure resources are used wisely and costs are contained. So I don't think there's a lot of challenge about the principle of an ombudsperson, although there is some disagreement in the Assembly. It was by no means a unanimous position this Assembly took. And I want to reiterate, sir, in this time where we're having to look at the costs of all arm's length organisation, this government has been running with the policy of not establishing new ones unless there is a solid case for doing so, and that's the work we're doing now. So, but as I said, we're heading in a direction that does establish an ombudsperson, and legislation will be produced once the work that's the intermediate work is complete.
Supplementary, can I tell? Deputy Tadio.
Actually, sir, no, I no longer need to ask the question.
Thank you. Final supplementary, Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir, and I'd be interested to know if the Chief Minister is one of those who supports it or not, but that's not my actual question here. What assessment of the risks of not taking timely action, and the key word there is timely, despite every single piece of work on this topic, certainly that I've seen so far, all concluding the same thing, that a public services ombudsperson is the way to go and could actually save money in the long run. So what assessment of those risks has been undertaken, and how does the Chief Minister justify ignoring those risks and effectively kicking this into the long grass once again?
Chief Minister.
I'm not sure if the Deputy actually has listened to anything I've said over the last few minutes there, but his intent in using this expression of kicking into the long grass, this has not been kicked into the long grass. We've taken it forward into a position that will seek to produce legislation. I do support the principle of an ombudsperson, but not at any cost We haven't done any risk assessments because we didn't need to. We have a complaints programme at the moment, a complaints a panel, sir, that manages things adequately at the moment. Now, that can be improved upon, and that's the work we're doing now, sir.
Can I ask a point of clarification, sir?
No,
Okay.
but if your question's not been answered, you could make an observation and I could put a ruling
I
on
was
it.
just going to ask if the risks were assessed as part of Deputy Scott's piece of work that looked into this.
Was that part of your original question or not? Well, if it was, well, not quite good enough. Question 5, Deputy Tadier will put to the Minister for Housing. Deputy Tadier.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise what involvement, if any, he has in decisions made by Andium Homes to offer existing housing stock for sale, and what consultation, if any, takes place between Andium Homes and local political representatives, particularly where such sales would result in a reduction in the social housing stock within the representative's parish or constituency?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Answering the second part of the question first, is that I'm not sure that there is any particular engagement that happens at the level that the Deputy has suggested, but thanks to the feedback that he's provided, not just by asking this question, but separately in an email, I can confirm to him that Andium has undertaken that they will look at this to see if that can be updated. Going back to the first part of the question, sir, the sales policy is dealt with in Andium's business plans. They will try to look ahead and deliver a mix of sales for first-time buyers, including from existing sites and new ones. There has been a bit of a pivot recently towards using newer sites rather than older ones. But what I understand tends to happen, sir, is when a decision is made to sell homes on a particular site, that does not get delivered instantly because it takes a very long time for the tenancies in those homes to naturally end, and so that there doesn't. Once that starts, it takes years and years for that to eventually be delivered, and I'm not sure there is a review of that as it's going on, and not one that includes the Minister, certainly.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. There's a context to this question. As the Minister will know, St Brillard's, and in particular Llanelwy, was designated as to be Jersey's second town, or de facto second town. And we also have a limited supply of social housing without any new sites being identified for either building or acquisition by Andium or other providers. Therefore, any properties that are sold off, albeit for lucky homeowners in the future, may contribute to the dwindling stock in St Brillard. Does the Minister agree that whilst it's possible and probably right for Andium to be politically agnostic or neutral, that as Housing Minister he doesn't need to be? And could he say whether there's scope for some kind of political steering of what happens in our local communities in terms of the eventual housing stock from his point of view?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I know that I have philosophical alignment with the Deputy on this. I think that social housing is an extremely important part of our whole island community and the communities locally that make up that, and it's important that people across the island, not just St Helier, have access to decent social housing, and because we have a government-owned provider that can develop that, that absolutely ought to be part of our ambition to make that a wide offer to as many people as possible across the whole island and not just in St Helier. And I hope, sir, that though the opportunity was not included in the Bridging Island plan for specifications for more social housing in St Brellard's, just because it wasn't proposed as part of that plan, there will be future opportunities where that can be considered, either in future island plans, but if potentially this could be something that could be looked in for the West of Ireland framework as well. But I absolutely agree with the Deputy. As Minister for Housing, I promote the provision of social housing across the whole island.
Deputy Renner.
Yes, so in his first answer, the Minister spoke about Andium making these decisions. Can he state whether there is a policy document of any kind that Andium have, either private or public, that sets out the decision-making framework they use in order to decide whether to, how many properties to sell, where to sell them, and what mix to do so.
Minister.
Generally speaking, there's their business plan, and that will include their targets. I'd have to double check. I think it might have some reference to specific sites in there as well. When it comes to the provision of new homes that they're developing, where there will be a split on those sites of some for social housing and some for purchase, that I believe it was in the island plan that specified how that tenure would be set, and the Minister for Housing is consulted in that, and then that goes through the planning process.
Supplementary?
Yes, I'm curious to know whether the Minister has ongoing discussions about this with Andium, or is it something that is essentially he sees as a business matter and therefore not subject to his control or influence?
Minister.
So I wouldn't necessarily take it upon me the initiative to go to Andium and dictate exactly how every single one of their sites ought to be managed and what tenure they should be providing on it. I would want to receive advice the other way round from them, because they're the ones who are managing the data every day about what demand there is for their homes, because that does fluctuate. And collaboratively with them, we have occasionally pivoted on little parts of that strategy as and when has been needed to, when we've seen demand spike in some areas or reduce in others. So just for example, sir, at the moment, there hasn't been too much heavy demand for two-bedroom social rental homes, but there's quite a significant amount for first-time buyer two-bedroom homes, for example. So, you know, that they would discuss with me if there was a case for maybe pivoting in particular areas to satisfy demand as and when there is it, but I wouldn't necessarily provoke that initiative. I would take advice from Andium on it, because they're the ones day-to-day with access to the data and able to advise me on that.
30 Miles.
Thank you, sir. It's just in relation to what Deputy Tadia said about Lekeneve being designated as a second town, and also the area in the Bridging Island plan, which suggests that there will be a West of Island planning framework. And that is something that, as a result of propositions that we have brought, the Minister for the Environment has agreed to conduct. Does therefore the Housing Minister consider it sensible for Andium to wait until that West of Island planning framework has been completed before any more decisions are taken about the either renewal or disposal of stock in that particular area of the island? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Well, so I'm not aware that such a decision has been made in that context, sir, because as I've mentioned in an earlier answer, when decisions have been made to designate a site for sale, that's not something that is enacted immediately, because there'll be people in those homes living their lives with tenancies that have to be honoured, and that only changes at the natural end of a tenancy. And so it may well be that when homes recently have been sold in St Bellard, that may actually originate from a decision that comes years ago, potentially, because it takes a long time for that to be enacted. So I'm not aware of a specific decision relating to St Bellard being made since we were provided with that context of the work being done for West of Island framework.
Supplementary?
Thank you, sir. I'm not sure that gets to what I was really asking, because tenants of social housing in St Bellard have been written to by Andium and asked whether they would like to purchase their homes. So my question is, should that policy cease until all the work has been done around the West of Island planning framework?
Minister.
Frankly, I don't know what's most desirable in that, in what the Deputy is suggesting to me, but I'm happy to think about it and have a conversation with her. But as I said, it's possible that the decision to do this may have arisen some time ago, but I can take that off with the Deputy to find out what the most appropriate way forward is.
Final supplementary, Deputy Tadia.
First of all, can I thank the Minister for his helpful response and engagement, and ask actually whether he understands the basic principle that if we are going to sell off housing stock in any of our constituencies or districts or areas, that it's important that we make sure in advance that there are plans to replenish that stock, especially when we still have an overall shortage and demand for social housing, sir.
Minister.
Absolutely, sir. We can learn from the failures of other jurisdictions where that has not been part of their approach, and I often have visions of the Thatcherite right to buy policy in the UK, which has been a complete disaster because it hasn't featured the kind of thinking that Deputy Tadia has referred to. And I would say that there is a difference with Andium's home buy product, because that does have greater safeguards in it. They are in the process of delivering hundreds of new homes, both for social rent and for first-time buyers. That is in the context of the island plan projections, but there are places in the island that are left out in that. And so when it comes to future planning designations, then I definitely think what the Deputy has suggested ought to be a significant consideration in all of that.
Thank you, Minister. Question 6, Deputy Wall, put to the Chair of PPC. Deputy Wall.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chair advise what plans, if any, exist to amend standing orders to make it a requirement for members to... Sorry, thank you. I'll start again. Will the Chair advise what plans, if any, exist to amend standing orders to make it a requirement for members to include membership of the Freemasons or other secular fraternities in their declaration of interest? And if no such plan exists, will he explain why not?
Chair of PPC.
Thank you, sir. The Deputy is aware that the Assembly will debate an amended Code of Conduct at the next meeting on the 3rd of February. Rule 13 of the revised code will require members to declare any relevant interest that might reasonably be thought to influence their approach to a matter under consideration, including, and I quote, membership of certain organisations such as private societies and clubs that have specific terms and agreements, including membership by selection or invitation only. As the guide to the code states, declaring the membership of such organisations means members can address any perception of fraternity, loyalty, or being beholden to an organisation. The Freemasons are not mentioned specifically, but the introduction of Rule 13 in the terms I've quoted addresses the Deputy's question. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. Just to say, does the Chair of PPC recognise that membership of any organisation that is hierarchical, has confidential membership and requires members to support and protect each other should be recorded, as it affects the public's perception of impartiality and trust in our political system? Does he agree with that sentiment?
Chair of PPC.
I certainly agree that the approach that has been put forward by PPC in regard to the Code of Conduct is the right way forward, and we would not like to specifically choose to mention solely the Freemasons, but put it in more wider context, and I think that has been appropriately displayed in the format of P102, which we are bringing to the next meeting. And I hope that also that members, if they wish to engage on this matter, can come to the briefing that we are putting on next Monday at 3:30. And if there are still any concerns, we can thrash those out at that briefing. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Mézec.
Thank you, sir. Would the Chair be able to confirm whether the declaration that he's referenced in his answers so far that members will be expected to make in future would go as far as to include groups which are political in their nature and in the outcomes in which they wish to achieve, but fall short of being political parties?
Chair of PPC.
And under Article Rule 13, no, that is not the intention. I understand that obviously Deputy Wall has brought an amendment, brought a proposition which will cover some of the questions that the Deputy is asking, but that is not incorporated within the body of this work. No, thank you, sir.
Supplementary. Deputy Rob Ward.
Thank you, sir. Can I just ask the Chair of PPC whether, and I thank him for the answer to his question, because it was a very clear answer to the question, which is nice to see, whether part 13, and he may respond and say, go to the briefing, which is fair enough, but whether it would cover interest through spouses or any relatives as well, because there are grey areas there as to what that influence extends to. Thank you, sir.
Chair of PPC.
Rule 13 does not specify spouses or other family members. No, it is particularly for that individual. And if the deputy believes that that should be incorporated within Rule 13, then obviously the only approach now would be to bring an amendment to proposition, and then it could be debated by the whole Assembly to be included. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary. Final supplementary, Deputy Ward.
No, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair of PPC. Question 7 was one to be posed by the Consultative of St Martin. So we'll move on to question 8 that Deputy Dublé will put to the Chief Minister. Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chief Minister advise whether the Council of Ministers has changed its policy towards the provision of government funds to charities, and if so, how this will impact the provision of public services as a consequence?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. It is the government's policy to support charities as much as we possibly can, recognising the significant value they provide to the community. The taxpayer provides approximately £40 million annually to support Jersey-registered charities. The policies have not changed. Funding is allocated from the budgets of sponsoring departments following an assessment of need for a particular service or services. In addition, work is underway on commissioning a framework to ensure we have a consistent approach to dealing with requests from organisations that find themselves in unexpected difficulty. Accountable officers are expected to review grants periodically, usually annually, to ensure they still achieve the agreed outcomes, which may mean that the individual agreements are varied or discontinued or renewed, and the financial context is examined in case of service need changes. So in short, we haven't changed our policy, sir. It's our policy to continue to support charities as much as we can.
Supplementary.
I thank the Chief Minister for his answer, and I have noticed a pattern across not just the charity that has been subject of questions this morning, but other charities not getting funding that they were getting. This doesn't tally up with the increased needs that I think we're seeing across the island. So if there isn't a plan, is the Chief Minister working on a cohesive plan, perhaps a needs analysis across all of the charitable services to ensure that they are properly supported where they need funding to help islanders?
Chief Minister.
Well, that is part of the practice now. It's ongoing work right across government, through all the departments where we work closely with charities. There is an ongoing assessment of need, and we have very good relationships with charities in a number of instances, and I haven't got a breakdown of the whole list of all the organisations, and many of them that receive a share of that money to ensure that money is well distributed, sir. And I would just remind members, of course, that accounting officers have to work in line with the public finances manual, which sets out the rules, if you like, of how we engage and how we ensure taxpayers' money is being best used.
So one of the issues raised by the case of the Jersey Employment Trust was the question of funding having been frozen. In other words, no inflation-linked increases for a considerable period of time, and that being a factor in the need for top-up funding. Does the Chief Minister agree that since most government services are operated in line with inflation, that a similar policy should not apply in relation to services that the government has contracted out to organisations such as charities?
Chief Minister.
Could I just ask the deputies just to repeat the last part of the question? I'm not sure.
Yes, Deputy.
Does the Chief Minister agree that the funding for services that the government contracts out to other organisations such as charities should in general rise in line with inflation, much as it does in terms of government funding for its own services that are provided through government departments?
Chief Minister.
Whilst the budgeting process accounts for inflation in certain areas, it's by no means automatic across government budgets, sir. And there were robust discussions about departmental funding around the Council of Ministers table and ultimately in this Assembly. And in relation to all of the grants we give, not just to charities, but to other third parties, third sector, arm's length organisations, as the public finance manual prescribes, sir, those are reviewed on a regular basis to ensure money is being well spent. There are quite a lot of instances where we have significantly increased grants to charities, where they are increasing the services they deliver. And I, for one, support that. I think the more the third sector can do, and the less the government can do in certain areas is good. We should be looking to the third sector and the private sector to deliver services where we can, where they can do it better than government. So I hope that answers the Deputy's question.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. I think there does just appear to be a contradiction here that I think it would be useful to hear the Chief Minister's views on, which is that he has said that he thinks that in general it is good that services are contracted out to other organisations and that provides good value for money. And yet he is also saying that these funds have to be carefully managed, and indeed we've just seen with the Jersey Employment Trust an attempt to bring back in-house services that were going to be provided by the Jersey Employment Trust. How does he square this contradiction? Where does the centre of gravity lie?
There is no contradiction, sir. We have not sought to bring back services. What we want to do is ensure services aren't duplicated, and that's at the heart of this particular the discussions we've been having with the Jersey Employment Trust, sir. And I'm pleased to say, following a meeting yesterday afternoon with myself and Deputy Lindsay and officials and the board of the Jersey Employment Trust, a joint statement has been issued that I'm sure members will see this morning, which removes all risk of redundancy for staff, but importantly, it makes sure we have the time and the commitment from both sides for that we look to a revised contract for services that reflects islanders' needs and avoids duplication. There are instances in charities where islanders are receiving duplication from the same services from different charities and from the government. That's not necessarily in the best interests of islanders or the charities themselves. We've agreed that on an agreement on data sharing that enables us to move forward positively together so we can assess that and avoid duplication to ensure that money is being well spent. And that might end up in some services being brought back into government. It could mean that we give more services to a charity, but we need to discuss it and understand the data to put that forward. And a business plan for JET services that meets a requirement of the public finances manual, sir, and ensures that government and JET services are complementary to each other, sir. And I think we are all agreed that we want to ensure that JET can continue to deliver this for many, many years to come. Thank you.
Deputy Taddeo.
Could the Chief Minister confirm whether it's necessary for charities which receive certain grants from government to reveal information about their reserves?
Chief Minister.
I think that's important. I think we have open book policy with all the charities we support. I'm sure the Public Finances Manual and Deputy Feltham knows that probably better than I do, being I'm not sure whether she's a poacher turned gamekeeper or gamekeeper turned poacher. I'm not sure how that works, but it's important that we have open book policy with all of our charities and all of the organisations that receive public funds. And whilst organisations keeping reserves is important, it's important that those reserves aren't too large, sir, or irrelevant.
So the reason I asked the question is clearly charities provide such important work in Jersey, but not all charities are created equally. And I'm wondering if, for example, a particular charity were to receive a large bequest and up until that point they've been relying on a certain amount of government funding, at what point does the grant and relationship and SLA and delivery all get taken into consideration, and to what extent is it government's job to get itself tied up in those areas to make sure government's money is spent effectively and that the charities also remain efficient?
It's difficult to answer that, sir, without the context or the detail of a specific case. But in general, I refer to my previous answer that it will depend on entirely on the circumstances and entirely upon the services we're contracted with the charity to deliver, sir. But I think the principle is the same. We have to ensure there is open book policy and the finances that are provided to the charities are relevant and sufficient for them to do their jobs. And we must take into account that they're not overfunded and not carrying too many reserves.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. As Chief Minister mentioned in his answer, commissioning framework that has been developed by the government, would the Chief Minister confirm that the new commissioning framework has been developed and it's in place, and this will take forward commissioning services through the charities, or it's still under development? And if it's still under development, when the updated commissioning framework will be finalised?
Chief Minister.
Yes, thank you, sir. Work is underway on a commissioning framework to ensure we have a consistent approach. I can't give an exact timeline on that, sir, but I will find out and get back to the Deputy.
Supplementary.
Absolutely, thank you, and I would welcome follow-up in public domain when the commissioning framework will be in place, so that all charitable sector will know. And would the Chief Minister advise if long-term funding that has been suggested by Public Accounts Committee, Controller and Auditor General, and the charity themselves, long-term funding, 3 years, for example, funding, would be part of this commissioning framework to ensure that charity can plan their work and deliver the services that they're required?
Chief Minister.
Yes, I mean, it would be what we support in the principle of longer-term funding. We're looking at that now with the budget. The dormant bank account fund is a case in point. Deputy Gorst, I think it was last year, extended funding from that onto a 3-year cycle. It's important that when we're dealing with charities, we give as much certainty as we possibly can. Of course, all that is caveated by an annual budget. I mean, we have to agree the budget and use the funds that the states agree. So it's we have to reconcile those positions, but in principle, I would be more comfortable in certain instances if we could provide a sort of longer-term cycle for some of these organisations.
Final supplementary, Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. And I agree with the Chief Minister that often the third sector can deliver the best service, and this is backed up, isn't it, by the Joel's data that shows charities have the highest trust from the public. And there is a balance to be struck, again, around the governance of public funds. Given all of this information, can the Chief Minister inform the Assembly whether a decision or a policy has been made, either centrally by himself or by any of his ministers, to deliver more services in-house through government departments? And if so, who took that decision, when and why?
Chief Minister.
No, so as far as I know, there is no policy about that. The policy is to deliver the best value for islanders at all times, and that's what we continue to adhere to.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Question 9, Deputy Renouf will put to the Minister for External Relations. Deputy Renouf.
Yes, so will the Minister provide an update on the implementation timetable for Jersey's Pillar 2 tax rules, as well as any anticipated revenue, in light of the recent announcement that US companies will effectively be exempt from the Pillar 2 global tax rules?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. The implementation timetable remains on schedule. Details can be found on the Revenue Jersey Pillar 2 webpage. 2026 will be the first year in which groups in scope will comply with this tax. Regarding anticipated revenue from Pillar 2, we've always taken a prudent approach to our revenue forecast. Jersey has a wide range of groups in our Pillar 2 taxpayer base. The majority of these groups will remain within the scope of Pillar 2 following the latest OECD guidance, and the OECD side-by-side proposals are not expected to impact the Pillar 2 base case revenues identified in the budget.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. So I think the Minister has just confirmed that the base case funds of 50 million a year, roughly, that the budget relied upon are still regarded as secure. But can he say, is there still any upside potential in the Pillar 2 revenues, which was going to be used to fund various things, stabilisation fund and so on, or has that disappeared completely?
Minister.
Well, so the updated guidance from the OECD, as the Deputy will know, was lengthy and technical. We have our undertaking, as we've been continually doing throughout the development of Pillar 2, to engage with potential taxpayers who've got structures or firms in Jersey, and we will continue to do that. We remind ourselves, of course, that the liability was for starting years 2025. These changes will only come into effect in 2026. So we would still expect to see an upside in 2025. We'll have the first payments on account in May of 2026, so we'll have a better understanding of what that upside is. But we remind ourselves that this side-by-side agreement means that, as we'd always predicted, they will be potentially very short-term. But we're working through that, and we'll have more information about whether there'll be any unintended consequences around business activity as we move through the next weeks and months.
Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister consider Jersey's current approach to Pillar 2 to be sufficiently flexible to adapt to further international divergence or reform? And what arrangements are in place to reassess the island's position if the framework materially changes, and with whom?
Minister.
Well, we know that the side-by-side agreement means that there is a difference in approach, even though it's accepted as standing side-by-side for the US and non-US companies. We are focused first and foremost on the competitiveness of the financial services sector and the remaining competitiveness of those Pillar 2 groups. As I said, we are engaging with US groups to understand better the impact that side-by-side will have on them, and we will remain agile and flexible depending on the outcome of these discussions. We didn't approach this as a revenue-raising exercise. We approached it as part of an international agenda. That's how we continue to approach it, but we equally approach it from wanting to maintain Jersey as a competitive jurisdiction.
Supplementary.
Yes, thank you, sir. Would the Minister identify one concrete risk to Jersey arising from the Pillar 2 development that he's actively managing at the moment, and one specific action that he's taken in the last 6 months to mitigate that risk?
Minister.
Sir, I've personally engaged with taxpayers in stateside to mitigate risks. My officials have been party to the conversations at the OECD to mitigate that risk. We've been in touch with US Treasury to mitigate that risk, and we're doing I think a very good job in regard to mitigating that risk. But we remind ourselves that we live in a very highly competitive world. We have America, which is putting America first. We have some really important US businesses in Jersey, and we want those businesses to remain in Jersey. and we, from a departmental perspective, are committed to working with those businesses to ensure that they remain in Jersey.
Final supplementary, Deputy Renouf.
Yes, can the Minister confirm, therefore, from what I think I understand from his answers, that there will be no tax income expected beyond that which came last year from US-based companies arising from Pillar 2? And can he further state whether there are any actions that the government is planning or plans to take to try and improve Jersey's position with regard to Pillar 2?
Minister.
Well, as the Deputy knows, our whole approach was one based upon taking the international standard and shaping it to Jersey's advantage. That's why we've got the domestic covered tax rather than the QDM TT. And that is the approach that we continue to take. We need to be careful. I didn't say there would be no future income beyond 2025. I said the upside was more doubtful perhaps for some US companies than might have been previously. But our whole focus is on understanding any actions or decisions those US firms might take in order that we can respond and seek to ensure that they remain here in Jersey because of the value that they bring in regard to jobs, in regard to tax, and in regard to the broader growth in the economy. That policy position has not changed. It's at the core of everything that we've done, that Jersey remains competitive.
Thank you, Minister. Question 10, Deputy Renouf will put to the Minister for Infrastructure. Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister provide an update on the tender process for the former Bowls Club site at Lecre?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for his question. So I should start by saying that we haven't run a tender process, but indeed an expressions of interest were sought. So who's out there and what can you do, as opposed to a tender, which is give me your best detailed price proposal. Sir, the Jersey Community Land Trust, who I describe as being the party in the lead, having been selected by a panel, are currently working with Jersey Property Holdings, and at the moment they're seeking pre-planning advice on whether or not changes to the use of permissions would be required to deliver their proposals. Once that advice has been received, I expect to receive an update on their final proposals, which I understand have been developed following further engagement with the local community. So I'd like to thank the Deputy and his colleagues for their patience, and I hope to be able to meet the district representatives before the next sitting to update them. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir, and I'm grateful to the Minister for confirming the preferred, I don't know if I should say bidder, but expression of interest lead candidate. Can he say what timetable he has put on those discussions and whether he expects that to conclude before the next election?
Minister.
So I'm reluctant to put a timetable, so I expected the whole process to take 3 months, and currently we're 9 months down the road, sir. And as I've mentioned, we are waiting for feedback from our colleagues in planning, and I don't have a time scale for that, sir. I would certainly hope that this will be concluded in weeks rather than months. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Tadia.
So just to avoid any confusion, can the Minister confirm that the preferred bidder still remains the same as that which was explained to us on the 17th of September when we met with the Minister and his department?
Minister.
So I can, sir, and I think I made it quite clear to both the representatives of St. Ballard, sir, and officers that I'd fully expected that all bidders were consulted by the preferred party, sir, to see if there were synergies that we could include within the proposal, sir. I'm frustrated, sir, because I met somebody who took part in the process only last Wednesday, and they told me they had not been contacted, so I fed that back to the department. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
So in all of these, I've always thought that it's right for deputies in the district not to get directly involved with the process Sir, but there is also a counterpoint to that, that the local community did expect to have some form of consultation and input about what would ultimately be put at Le Creux. And does the Minister accept that this doesn't seem to have happened, and whilst there might have been consultation with the bidders, of course there will be, that there doesn't seem to have been that wider consultation with the community about what they wanted to see there? And if that is the case, what lessons have been learnt?
Minister.
Sir, I think similar lessons have been learnt, sir, with Le Creux than we've learnt with Havre de Passe, in as much as that we should get an external panel to see from start to finish, sir. Sir, the delay was compounded originally because of the uncertainty around St Owen's Tunnel, sir. St Owen's Tunnels concern some members of the St Bullards community and not others, sir, because shooting takes place there. Some people support shooting, others don't, sir. We had a duty, in my opinion, to ensure that those tenants that we had in the tunnels, who through no fault of their own were looked after, sir, so that delayed the process. I have committed to meeting the deputies for a second time, sir, before I make any decision. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. It's now a number of years, and right back at the beginning of this political term, that the Bowls Club gave notice that they would be leaving. And one of the things that they said to me at the time is that they wanted to give that advance notice because this was a really good asset for the island and they really didn't want it to go to waste. And the government to do what they always do and not get on and find new tenants and use for it. Yet here we are, and it's still taken a very long time, and I don't think we're at a solution yet. What is going wrong? This is not a one-off example. It happens frequently. What's going wrong and what could be done better to ensure this doesn't happen in future?
Minister.
Sir, I pay tribute to the former club, sir, who did give the government notice, sir. So Le Creux is used widely each and every day, each and every week, sir. There are a whole range of activities that take place at Le Creux, sir. We are talking about a part of Le Creux, and as I mentioned in my previous answer, part of the delay was because of the uncertainty around the St Owen's Tunnel, sir, so we weren't able to forge ahead when we thought we could forge ahead originally. So the preferred bidder had plans which wouldn't have received planning permission, sir, involved two very large structures, sir. We're talking about a country park in the green zone, sir, but they do have a number of good ideas, sir, and suggestions, and I do believe they have the will and the expertise, sir, to deliver. Thank you.
Supplementary.
Sir, is there a structural problem within government that means that in cases like this in future they could be handled differently and better?
Minister.
Sir, I think we need to, as I said earlier, stick to timetables, sir. We have some people who are interested, others who aren't interested, sir, and whatever we do, sir, we're not going to please everyone, sir. We are trying our best to be as fair as possible, sir, to involve as many people as possible, and I do think we've learnt lessons which I hope the department will take forward. Thank you, sir.
Final supplementary, Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Minister for his answers. As Deputy Stevenson has alluded, the former Bowls Club has now been empty for around 2 years, despite many proposals coming forward and huge community interest. Does he accept that the risk here is that from the public's point of view, the only question now is going to be whether Le Creux goes the way of La Folie or Havre de Passe?
Minister.
Sir, I can't comment on La Folie, only to say that when I became Minister for Infrastructure, I tried to take back La Folie, but we're in a long lease with the ports of Jersey, sir, so they are responsible for La Folie. Havre de Passe, sir, is open. People are swimming daily, they're using the changing rooms daily, and the toilets daily, sir. So Havre de Passe is open, and as I mentioned, sir, Le Creux is widely used, and we hope that further use of this facility will start very shortly, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Sir Martin is absent for question 11. So we move on to question 12, which Deputy War will put to the Minister for Infrastructure. Deputy War.
Seems a very timely question, sir. Will the Minister detail what new information, if any, has been provided to those groups tendering to operate the Havre de Passe Lido and swimming pool? And will he explain what actions have been taken to provide assurance that any issues arising from the previous tender process will not be repeated?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for his question. So I remind Deputy Ward and members that I have not been and continue not to be involved in the detailed operational aspects of the expressions of interest process. I do understand that the Deputy himself has attended one of the private meetings that was hosted by Jersey Business with the Love Our Lido group, but I don't know in what capacity he attended or the details of that meeting. I'm therefore not aware of the detail of any information requested, but Jersey Business have confirmed to me this morning that they have provided details on both costs and planning to the two parties. I have said previously that lessons have been learnt, and in my view, future expressions of interest would be better served if they were seen through from start to finish by an independent panel.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. So what steps has government taken to ensure this asset will be maintained and improved for future generations?
Minister.
Sir, as I mentioned in a previous answer, sir, the swimming pool is open, sir. People are using it each and every day, sir. So I've asked Jersey Business to oversee the process, and I think that is best left to them. So I was prompted to write a response to a recent letter in the Jersey Evening Post. So it is more than a little disappointing that one of the members of Love Our Lido group, and indeed a proposed governor, repeatedly write comments publicly that recent events around Love Our Lido is corruption at its very worst. The most recent occasion, sir, was as recent as the end of last week, whilst discussions continue with Jersey Business. Sir, these comments have been made repeatedly, including after Durat Olsen's review, and again following the recent Petty Debts Court judgment. Is that potential charity governor now saying that our court system is correct? If so, I'd expect them to have some evidence of such a claim.
So was my question answered after that speech? My question was, what steps has government taken to ensure that asset will be maintained and improved for future generations? I don't believe the Constable has answered that question.
Yes, do you want to respond to that part of the question, Minister?
Sir, the premises are open, sir. They're being serviced daily, sir. The toilets and the change rooms are being serviced every day, sir. Thank you.
David Tellier.
So, yeah, following on from that, sir, I'm wondering if it's worth government re-emphasising to the public and for visitors' benefit that the pool itself is very much open, that the tide is still coming in twice a day, and that the water in the pool in the Lido is getting replenished twice a day, and that there are many other eateries in the area, cafes, restaurants, and you can also bring a flask of hot tea and use the facilities there if you want to, sir. That message may have been lost in all of the furore.
I'm happy to do so, sir. I think the Deputy forgot to say that the sun rises and sets, sir. So I should say, sir, that ahead of the Christmas swim, sir, we offered to provide power so that people could actually heat water and make tea and coffee, sir. But that suggestion was declined, sir, by the Jersey Swimming Club. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary? Final supplementary, Deputy Ward.
No, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Move on now to question 13, which Deputy Catherine Curtis will put to the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs. Deputy Catherine Curtis.
Thank you, sir. Further to figures published within a recent Freedom of Information request, will the Minister explain the reasons why the rate of successful convictions for domestic abuse has fallen over the past 5 years, despite a rise in recorded incidents over the same period, and advise what actions or improvements, if any, are being taken or considered to secure more convictions?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for the question. Over the past 5 years, there has been an increase in crimes reported to the police in relation to domestic abuse. This, sir, is a positive. This means people now have the confidence to report these matters to the police. However, there has also been a rise in the number of victims who choose not to support a criminal prosecution. This can happen for many complex and often deeply personal reasons. When victims do not support a prosecution, it relates in fewer cases being detected, charged, and ultimately convicted. This has contributed to a declining overall conviction rate. The states of Jersey Police are not compliant about these figures, there is a clear need to address the gap between the number of crimes reported and the number that result in convictions. This responsibility does not solely lie with the States of Jersey Police, and they are committed to working with the Law Officers Department to bring as many cases as possible to justice. In relation to strengthening, it will be noted that we have developed some legislation in relation to the violence against women and girls. A key development is included in the draft Domestic Abuse Jersey Amendment Law, which proposes new measures to strengthen prosecutions for victims even before a perpetrator is convicted. Currently, Jersey does not allow for pre-conviction emergency barring orders. This means police cannot require a suspected perpetrator of domestic abuse to leave the victim's residence or prevent contact while investigation is ongoing. As a result, police have limited tools to safeguard victims when an offence has not yet resulted in conviction.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. I thank the Minister for her answer. But one factor in putting off victims from continuing are potential long delays before getting to court, which is both bad for both victims and accused. Can the Minister say whether there's any plan to try and prevent those long delays before a case comes to court?
Sir, I appreciate that that can be an issue. I think what needs to happen is that once a victim has made their complaint and all the necessary work has been done, that these cases need to be expedited as quickly as possible. Obviously, this is close working in relation to the Law Officers Department and the police. It is obviously, I think everyone will be aware that more cases are coming to court, and this might be a matter that will need to be addressed in the future because as the Deputy rightly says, there are delays in our court processes, and that is a matter that needs to be looked at, sir.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. Following on from Deputy Curtis, who made a point about one of the reasons why victims might be choosing not to pursue matters further to prosecution. Has the Minister done any work to understand that point in more detail, understand those reasons in more detail, and what specific steps is the Minister taking or other agencies taking, such as the police, that will encourage more victims to take part in the prosecution process?
So, also one of the elements of the recommendations in relation to the violence against women and girls was that of looking at the processes in relation to the LOD and the police. And that review of the court process is ultimately coming to conclusion, and a vast piece of work has been done. And of course, once that is actually provided and that information is available, then obviously that can be looked at in closer detail. So hopefully that will also help. But I think there is a lot of work that needs to be done in relation to victims as a whole, and I think the support of those victims is also critical. So I think this is, as we've said previously, this is an ongoing piece of work that even after all of those recommendations under the violence against women and girls is completed, this is a matter that will need to be continued to be addressed in the future.
Supplementary.
I thank the Minister for her response and note indeed the need for ongoing work, but I just would like to try and gain some clarity on whether the Minister is confident that we know the reasons why people are not pursuing these matters to prosecution.
I think, sir, as I said, these are very complex personal matters, and I think sometimes it is difficult. Not all victims will want to continue with a prosecution. But what I think is very important is that those victims will initially report the matter to the police. Because once that matter has been reported to the police, it is, that information is then available to the police moving forward. So obviously if a victim comes to the attention of the police again, then obviously that is valuable information. So I think it does need further work. It's, as I said, the police aren't complacent with it. I think there is a lot of things that need to be looked at. I think once we have a clear indication in relation to some of the work under the Violence Against Women and Girls in relation to the complexity of the courts, because obviously that piece of work has spoken extensively to victims and the processes and how they feel those court processes and their dealings have actually been dealt with. So I think once that information is available, I'm confident that we can move things forward. But also, sir, we need to continue to resource these areas because at present I would suggest that we don't.
Final supplementary, Deputy Catherine Curtis.
Yes, thank you, sir. While the understanding of the harm caused by domestic abuse has improved, harm which includes long-term anxiety and mental health problems and trauma to children and the family, does the Minister think that there is still room for improved understanding among the police, the judiciary and the general public?
Sir, I believe that there will always be a journey. I think that it will never conclude that we are at the end of the road in relation to domestic abuse of any nature. So I think the learning from all of the information that's gathered along the way and the continual support, the continual need to develop staff and the continual need for learning and training will carry on, sir, in my view, forever. Because until such time as we have a perfect society, this will always need significant attention.
Thank you, Minister. Question 14, Deputy Andrews will put to the Minister of Health and Social Services. Deputy Andrews.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise whether, in his assessment, it is feasible to address a structural deficit in his department without additional growth bids, and if so, detail how efficiencies are being identified and implemented?
Minister.
So I think I should start by thanking the Deputy for referring to our situation as a structural deficit rather than an overspend. In answer to the question, I'm very hopeful that we can come in at health within budget, or as near as we can to within budget. We start, well, I'm very grateful, I have to say, to the Assembly for voting through the extra money, both for the base budget and for the additional work that we're doing on preventative measures and digital. But that notwithstanding, we still had to defer £1.2 million worth of spending and cast that into this year's budget, which starts us off a little bit on the back foot. But as I say, I think morale is very much raised in health service across the piece, and everybody appreciates the need to do everything they can to come in within budget for 2026.
Supplementary?
Yes, please, sir. What is the Minister doing to ensure efficiencies are going to be secured for 2026? And can the Minister explain how many efficiencies will be made during this year? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
So certainly couldn't put a number on the amount of efficiencies because this is ongoing work. The work for 2026 has been underway for some time. I think the Deputy is probably aware that we're required within the budget framework to come in with £9 million worth of efficiencies in accordance with the financial recovery plan. The senior leadership team have been working with the care groups since the autumn on this year's budget. They're looking at better procurement, clinical productivity, and every way that they can find of saving money on the one hand and generating money on the other. I think in addition to that, I've made it clear, and it's a shame that we're running out of time in this parliamentary session, but we are going to have a very close look at health funding going forward. I think we might have to, well, I think at some point we're going to have to continue to increase the money. We've got an ageing population. I think an 8% cumulative increase in people over 65 coming into the care system, sir. And I've been talking to a couple of retired clinicians who are going to help form part of a working group to undertake some of that work with our officers, sir. So I'm hopeful that throughout the course of the year we can establish that before this Parliament comes to an end, and hopefully they can work throughout the course of the year to come up with some suggestions that we'll then go and talk to the public about, sir.
Deputy Reniff.
Yes, so I've slightly changed my question because of the comments that the Minister just made at the end there. If there is a working party being set up, will the Minister confirm who is on it, what the terms of reference will be, and when it will be reporting, please?
Certainly happy to do that when it's been done. It's in its early stages. Work has been going on with the officers already, but I just think it's helpful to bring in people with experience of working in the system to help with that. The truth is that the two individuals concerned were already contacted me to say that they've been doing some work, and it struck me as it was useful to combine the work that they're doing with the work that we've been doing, so that we get a more sort of collaborative approach to coming up with the proposals. So, but in terms of reference and the people involved, I don't think it's appropriate for me to mention their names in the Assembly. We're certainly happy to make that public as and when we've got the situation completed. So,
supplementary.
Yes, sir. I wonder if the Minister would clarify how their work might interact with ongoing work, which the Minister might perhaps be able to update the Assembly on, relating to an overall health strategy.
Minister.
So I only met with one of the two gentlemen at the end of last week. So as I say, these are very much early days. Very happy to report on it as things progress, sir.
Final supplementary, Deputy Andrews. That brings that period of questions to an end. Now move on to questions to Ministers. Deputy Miles, you're the first question, are you?
First question, please, sir.
This first question to the Minister for Health and Social Services will be from Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. As a minister responsible for people with disabilities and long-term health conditions, what is the Minister's position on the situation that has unfolded with the Jersey Employment Trust? Was the Minister consulted, and if so, was he in agreement with the Minister for Social Security?
Minister.
Thank the Deputy for that question. So I do have a seat at the table and a hand in the discussions, albeit a rather weak one. I have to say that this is a slightly difficult one for me. We've heard today about collaborative cooperation between ministers, and I very much approve of that. But I think I'll contain my comments to saying that I'm hopeful that in the spirit of that cooperation, that moving forward, some of my long-held and strong views are going to be taken into account as we move to bring this situation to a conclusion, sir.
Supplementary?
No, thank you, sir.
Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. In recent days, his Assistant Minister has made statements to the media that the reallocation of underspends in the IVF budget to the wider health budget, as per R182/2024, will be reconsidered with, and I quote, a request made to Treasury for the underspend to be carried forward into 2026. Will the Minister confirm that such a request has been made and received by Treasury, and any necessary paperwork completed, and when does he expect a decision to be made?
Minister.
Sir, I've heard from my Assistant Minister that that's been done. I trust my Assistant Minister, and I haven't checked. So on the strength of what I've been told, I think it's safe to assume that that has been done, sir.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. I'm very glad to hear that. Thank you very much for that confirmation. And it certainly wasn't to seek to divide any ministers there. It was just to seek clarification from the Minister that it had been done. Will the Minister therefore commit also to an urgent review of the criteria for accessing IVF-funded treatment with a view to widening access to ensure that the money budgeted for treatment is helping as many islanders as possible who want to grow their families to do so? And if not, why not?
Minister.
just been informed by my assistant minister that we can't do that as yet until we've got the final figures from 2025. But it's always been our intention to review those criteria once we've got the figures, so I can confirm that when we've got the information that we require, that we'll carry out that. So thank you.
Deputy Chair.
Thank you, sir. The review panel comments on the end-of-life care law observed that while the Minister is responsible for treatments within care and health services, there is currently no explicit legal duty to provide those treatments. Does the Minister believe that the Minister for Health and Social Services should have a statutory duty to provide treatments across care and health services, and if not, why not?
Minister.
So I'm a tiny bit confused by the question in terms of what's being specified as a requirement. As members know, I think the first thing on the agenda for debate today is the provision of end-of-life care. So I don't know if the Deputy could extrapolate a little bit on what additional things that she believes are required or might be required.
Yes, can you clarify the point, Deputy Chair?
Yes, in the panel's report, it's noted that the Minister for Health and Social Services at the moment does not have a statutory legal duty to provide health and care across services in Jersey. And the question was whether the Minister believes that this should be as a next step when we're discussing end-of-life statutory duty today, but actually the wider statutory duty for all care and health services, should the Minister believe that that's important to have statutory duty?
Yes, Minister.
I believe that is important as a principle, sir. I'm still a little bit confused about the detail of that, and I'm very happy to pick up the detail of that with the Deputy afterwards, sir. But as a principle, I can answer that by saying that I'd agree that's an important issue.
Supplementary?
Yes, so then does that mean that the Minister has not had those kind of discussions, maybe within the discussion around the end-of-life statutory duty, or wider with officers or with other ministers, assistant ministers, about that there isn't this statutory duty presently for the Minister?
Minister.
Well, certainly as regards the last 12 months of anybody's existence, there will be a statutory duty after this debate, hopefully if the debate goes in the right direction. So I think that's a substantial start, sir. And as I say, I'm happy to pick up on the detail of that going forward. But the upcoming debate, if people vote for it, will give that certainty for the final 12 months of anybody's life over here, sir.
Deputy Bailiff.
Thank you, sir. In the run-up to Christmas, the Minister had to increase the amount of private work that consultants did to help balance the books, with a consequent increase in waiting lists. Can the Minister say whether this process has now ended, and does he have any understanding yet of what effect, in overall terms, the increase in private work had on waiting lists?
Minister.
It would be difficult for me to provide clear evidence of what effect that may have had for the period of time that it ran, but I certainly know this, that everybody in the system was fully aware that if we got the budget through, that the instruction from me, a very clear one, was to return to normal business or pre-change business as at the very earliest opportunity. I'm not been breathing down anybody's neck, but I certainly trust that that's been carried out. It's been discussed on numerous occasions, and short of parading around and looking at theatres to see what they're doing, I take it as read that they fully understood what was required of them, and that they've carried that through, sir.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. I thank the Minister for that reassurance, which I think confirms that, as far as he's concerned, that instruction is finished. Given that the Minister has a policy to increase the amount of private healthcare, does he accept that as the health service is currently organised with the same specialists providing private and public care, that any increase in private work is going to tend to increase waiting lists?
Minister.
That's not necessarily the case, sir. I can understand why it might look like that, but the more private work you do, the more income you generate. The more income you generate, the more clinicians you can afford to either employ, or the more operations that are required or Farnham can be undertaken. So I think it's not perhaps as it looks on the surface, sir.
Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. As the Minister frequently speaks of partnership, integrated care and whole system working, it seems based on his comments just now, he's disappointed that the JET funding decision affecting islanders with additional support needs seems to have proceeded in isolation. Can he tell us how islanders can have confidence that the principles I've just highlighted are genuinely operating when decisions of this significance impact upon the services he is responsible for and prevent silo decisions transferring the risk and cost into frontline health services?
Minister.
Well, without putting too fine a point on it, I think the public reaction to the situation has been well and truly heard, and I don't anticipate any significant change until this has been resolved. And once it has been resolved, I still don't anticipate any significant change, because I shall be doing my level best to ensure that whatever comes out of these discussions doesn't compromise anybody. So.
Supplementary.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Further to the U-turn regarding JET's funding, could the Minister explain the mechanisms and safeguards he has in place today to prevent silo decisions transferring risk and cost into frontline health services?
Minister.
Sorry, I'm just trying to interpret that question. Could I
repeat your question, Deputy Wilson?
Deputy, to repeat the question.
Yes, please.
Certainly, sir. Thank you. So, further to the U-turn regarding JET's funding, could the Minister explain the mechanisms and safeguards he has in place today to prevent silo decisions transferring risk and cost into frontline health services?
Minister.
Quite a complicated question, so I don't think I've got any provisions to prevent silo decision making. The only thing one can do to prevent that is to actually actively participate in the discussions, which, for good or ill, is what I've done to date. We are where we are, and going forward, I shall make my views known as stridently as I possibly can. I have got some views on this, and I shall be expressing them again as the discussions reopen.
Sir, could I just ask for a point of clarification on that?
Well, you can ask a new question because there are no other questions in the pipeline, so you can ask a fresh question.
Thank you. I just wonder if the Minister, I understand his passion for wanting to be involved and connected into the debate, but does he have any other mechanisms available to him to make sure that the risk is not transferred into the health service?
Minister.
Other than the powers of persuasion, so I don't think I have, if I'm completely honest.
Supplementary, Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. I'm trying to be helpful, but could the Minister draw on the principles of integrated care and whole system working, perhaps to establish some mechanisms that prevent and safeguard decisions being taken in isolation that have an impact on the risk and cost base in frontline services?
Minister.
I just thank the Deputy for pointing out that sort of mechanism. Like I say, in that the reality is that this is a situation that has to be done by negotiation. I don't think I can say very much more than that, sir, given my position.
Mr. Renouf.
Yes, sir. Can the Minister confirm it is his understanding that his department would have had to pick up the costs, at least some of the costs, of any clients that would have not been able to access JET funding if the top-up funding had not been made available? And were those costs discussed with him?
Minister.
I was assured that there was a degree of duplication that wouldn't have required any extra expenditure. I had my views on that, sir, but I think for the moment that's probably as much as I should say. Thank you.
Supplementary.
No, sir, but I have got more questions.
All right, we might come to you again, we'll see. Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister confirm whether in his proposition that he's due to lodge about the register of professionals in Jersey that psychotherapists are due to be removed from that list?
Minister.
I've been caught out, sir. I don't think I can answer that question, but I can certainly find out before lunch and get that answer back to Deputy Coles.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank him for the question, but I'm not sure that I want to.
All right. Supplementary, Deputy Coles, on that issue or not?
Can the Minister confirm his opinion whether psychotherapists should remain as a registered professional, though, sir?
Minister.
As I say, it's not an issue that I'm aware of, sir, so I'm very happy to look at it and meet up and explain whatever the outcomes to both of those questions are. So,
thank you. Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Follow the Common Strategic Policy Review Panel recommendations, where the panel raised concern about cross-cutting collaboration work between the ministers. The recommendation was very clear to the recommendations considered that the Deputy Chief Minister can play this role to ensure there is cross-collaboration going between ministerials. Taking into the response that just given about the jet situation where cross-ministerial work didn't happen, would the Minister consider, is the place to reconsider the rejection of that recommendation?
Minister.
well, there has been cross-ministerial collaboration. I'm not quite sure what the Deputy means about rejecting the decision. Could you just qualify what...
Yes, could you clarify that, please, Deputy Gardner?
I'm a little bit confused by that.
As followed Deputy Wilson answer, the Minister said he is not sure what tools does he have to ensure that the decision will be taken based on views from all departments and not by single department. The Common Strategic Policy Panel suggested that maybe Deputy Chief Minister, that currently he is also the Deputy Chief Minister, will coordinate this type of cross-cutting decisions. This recommendation was rejected. Do you think, does the Minister think there is a place to reconsider the rejection and to look how does it work?
Minister.
Forgive me for being a little dense, sir, but I'm not quite sure which rejection is being referred to. It was the rejection...
Do you want to clarify? Yes, Minister, you can sit down.
Forgive me, I don't want to waste everybody's time.
Well, if you want clarification, then you can, yes. Do you want to clarify what rejection you're referring to, Deputy Gardner? Just so the Minister can fully understand the question that you're...
Common Strategic Panel report made recommendation. Council of Ministers rejected recommendation that the Deputy Chief Minister will coordinate cross-cutting issues.
So your 15 minutes is up in any event, Minister. I wasn't looking at the...
I'm happy to try and answer it if you like.
As I should have been. So we move on to the second period of questions. Questions for the Minister for Housing. And the first question is from Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. According to the latest homelessness report, the number of people accessing homelessness services is up from 204 in quarter 2 2024 to 303 in quarter 3 2025. Can the Minister tell us how frontline services, shelters, support staff, temporary accommodation are being supported to manage the rising demand, and what additional interventions has he put in place to address this?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I'm not quite sure I agree with her assessment. The stats that were provided in the very first homelessness statistics were the first time that those had been collated, and there were gaps in that were identified for subsequent publications of those, which is why there was a spike in numbers there. And in fact, the numbers have gone down in the most recent quarterly report to the previous one to that, sir. But I have been working very closely with our homelessness charities. We have a very good relationship, and I think that we're being more agile than we have been beforehand in responding to particular needs as and when they arise. There's a few things I could let the Deputy know that we have done. For example, we've worked with Andy M Homes to be able to purchase some homes that will sit a bit differently within their stock of homes that can be available for particularly difficult cases when they arise. We've made some changes to social housing eligibility. There was one thing in particular that came about as a result of my work with Frida to make it easier for some of their clients to get access for social housing. So frequently these issues come up, and they're informed not just by the data but by the close relationship we now have with those providers, which I personally feel is at its strongest in the time that I can remember.
Thank you, sir. I stand corrected if the information I had available to me has been updated, and would be grateful if the Minister could actually provide the update for members. It appears, however, that shelters and temporary accommodation is at capacity, and one of the things that I would like to ask him is, how does he reconcile this with his own political party's aim to prevent homelessness, and why does he believe the system is still unable to provide sufficient, safe, stable housing, and capacity still seems to be an issue?
Minister.
Well, so we can recognise it very easily with the actions that we're undertaking. For example, so we're on site delivering hundreds of new social rental homes, something that's absolutely fundamental to this strategy. We have supported and enhanced the Housing Advice Service. They have greater capacity than they had. In fact, they didn't even exist a few years ago, sir, before I originally got the funding to establish them. That team is growing. It has more specialist staff in it than it has had before. It's going to continue growing this year, Sarah, as a new member of the team is joining soon. They're now doing more outreach work than was happening before. They are going to the places where people who are facing homelessness are being supported by other agencies rather than being reactive, and they're working with those who are being supported by others in some shape or form to come up with bespoke plans for them to get them into permanent housing. Every individual and family who's affected by it is unique and has different circumstances, but so we're in a substantially better position to respond to all of that than we have been in the past, and that is because of the innovations that we have deliberately pioneered in those recent years, sir.
Matthew Jowitt.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister clarify what feedback he has received on the recent proposal to lower the age threshold for social housing eligibility from 25 to 18 years?
Minister.
So from those for whom this will affect, i.e. social housing providers, the feedback has been nothing other than positive, sir. In fact, sir, I bet you they wish I'd done it earlier. They had been pushing me in that direction, and I was very pleased to feel that we'd finally hit a point where we were able to do that. In terms of the wider public feedback from it, of course, lots of that has also been positive, but I've rightly been challenged by members of our community over how this move affects people who are already on the gateway, who might be facing difficult circumstances. And I've been trying to communicate with those people as strongly as I can to make clear that this decision, though it opens up eligibility to younger people, as it rightly should do, it doesn't affect the banding system that will still allocate people on that list according to what need they're in, and you won't get a younger person who's not in urgent need leapfrogging an older person who is in urgent need. That will still be a defining characteristic of where people are banded. So I've been trying to communicate that to respond to that, I think, legitimate feedback and questioning that I faced.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. Thank you. And what additional support will be provided to 18 to 24-year-olds entering social housing to ensure the tenancy sustainment, particularly for those who with limited independent living experience?
Minister.
Thanks. So, well, one of the benefits of having made this change that we anticipate, we haven't seen it yet, but we're anticipating we will, is that those who approach the gateway who are younger than we've seen before, the team within the gateway may be able to identify when there are people who are coming forward who do require a bit of extra support. In fact, it may well be that some people could have applied for social housing earlier through the partnership pathway, which is, as the name suggests, it's a partnership where those people will be given greater support, but who weren't necessarily aware of its existence, but now, knowing that the general age eligibility has been lowered, approach the gateway and can be identified as actually maybe it's more appropriate for them to go through the partnership pathway to get that extra support. So the staff in the Gateway team will be keeping an eye out for that to make sure that those people are identified, so we're not just giving a set of keys to somebody when that's not necessarily the right thing for them, and extra support would be advisable for them instead.
Kovacs.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister update the Assembly on the progress of the social rents policy review required under my amended P29 from last year, including whether it will be completed by the end of this month and when the report will be published?
Minister.
I thank the Deputy for her question. So I think final proofreading is happening at this moment for that review. I can let members know that there'll be lots of reading that comes with it, because it won't just be a report as her proposition asks for, but there are also some really, I think, useful and interesting background papers about the system and comparisons with other places as well. So I'm hoping that that can be published in the next few days.
Supplementary.
Yes, and I thank the Minister and his officers for the initial briefing on some of the emerging findings, and I look forward to receiving the final report. Once it is published, can the Minister outline what steps he intends to take during the remaining months of his term to implement any improvements identified for social tenants, particularly those that can be progressed in the short term?
Minister.
Yes, so the review looks at a range of things that could be done to the social housing rent system, ranging from no change to little change to quite radical change, and it assesses the pros and cons to each of those, and there are advantages and disadvantages depending on what route we go down, but bearing in mind that there would be no chance of any kind of drastic reform to that in the remaining term of this Assembly, the report does helpfully identify some tweaks that could be achieved within the framework of the current system, and in particular how the system interacts with income support and how we can better align those policies. And I'll be looking forward to working with the Social Security Minister to try to get as much of that achieved within the remainder of this term of office, because whatever we may think about a long-term ambition for that, there are improvements that we could be pursuing on a short-term basis, and it would be foolish not to.
Deputy Brenner.
Thank you, sir. I think this is the last chance we'll have to ask questions without notice of this Minister. And so I thought I'd return to a question I think I asked in the very first one, and indeed subsequently have also asked, which is to do with the listed St Saviour's Hospital site and whether he can update the Assembly on that, and in particular, is Andium actually still working to develop this site?
Minister.
Thank the Deputy for that question, and I probably won't please him with a particularly useful answer on that, because it had slipped my mind exactly what the situation with that site is at the moment, and I think that is a sign of how difficult and complicated it is, that we're having an old listed building, that there are rules about what you can and can't do with it now does make that very complicated, and it's safe to say that there are different political views on what ought to be done about that. That's certainly safe to say, sir. I understand that the Minister for the Environment's supplementary planning guidance on that has now been published, but I'm not specifically aware of any work recently from Andium to develop more of the options around that, but I can ask for a greater update on that if the Deputy would like me to.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. A difficult listed building that people are struggling to know what to do with and fighting over what to do with. It does sound very, very familiar. We've already made one reference to La Folie today. What reassurance can the Minister offer that this isn't going to become another of those endless situations where a public building rots away when there is a clear ministerial guidance about what actually should be, at least in principle, done to develop the site?
Minister.
So to be honest, I probably can't offer him that much reassurance on that, but that speaks to the wider concerns I have about our government system, where there have been many of these kind of episodes, not just in housing, Fort Regent, the hospital as well, where our political system time and time again shows that it's not fit for purpose for delivering for our constituents on these big issues. and it's not my remit as Housing Minister, sir, but I believe we need drastic political reform in order to make our government work more effectively for the people we represent, and the St Saviour's Hospital is merely a symptom of that.
So, does the Minister share my concern that whilst there is much to commend about Andium's shared equity scheme for home buy, that there is nothing to make sure that the properties, the homes that are ultimately in that scheme remain ring-fenced in perpetuity, so that eventually, whilst there might be a caveat that they remain as first-time buyers, that these homes could eventually be lost to the scheme. Would the Minister give his comments on that and whether he would consider looking into that?
Minister.
So the Deputy raises a good point in that the financial element of the support for first-time buyer scheme exists at the start when the first purchasers acquire that home, but then in subsequent purchases that is lost. He is right, though, that the homes do remain first-time buyer homes in perpetuity, so they can't. We don't have a situation where public authorities are building homes for social rent or first-time buyers that are ending up turning into lucrative investment assets, as was part of the disastrous Thatcherite right-to-buy system in the UK. We do at least have that protection on that too. But I agree with the Deputy that I think that perhaps as an island we could do with a think about whether there is some kind of mechanism that could be used to maintain some financial benefit within that for subsequent purchases. First Step, which is distinct and different to home buy, has been a good example of Andium being able to partner with people buying their first home and using shared equity as part of that, but that's for homes in the private sector, not within Andium stock. But is there some learning that could be done on that about how some financial benefit could be maintained in that part of the system as well? That would have financial implications, and that would require a big think, not just from me as Housing Minister, but from shareholder representatives as well. But it's a good idea, of something to look at, and certainly something that should be on the table in future.
Supplementary?
So I thank the Minister for his answer. If he could just give an undertaking to keep members and myself informed about the progress on this, and perhaps to consult a bit more widely on the on that aim to keep housing stock and affordability within the scheme, that would be appreciated.
Most definitely, sir.
Thank you. Deputy Wilson, we've got 40 seconds left. Do you want to ask a question?
Yes, thank you, sir. I'll be quick. I wonder if the Health Minister could give us... Housing Minister, working together, you see. Whether the Housing Minister could give us his assessment of the current housing market.
25 seconds, Minister.
Green shoots, the landscape today is drastically different from where it was previously, where unsustainable house price rises were destroying any chances of young people feeling hope in their future. We've had a significant change to that and things settling down now, but I hope the main thing that in particular young people will take is that for the last 2 years they have had a Housing Minister whose foot has been on the pedal on this, making sure we go forward, and that has been a marked difference from what we'd seen previously to that.
Thank you, Minister. Now move to the third period of questions for the Chief Minister, and the first question is from Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. With regard to the JET funding situation, will the Chief Minister inform the Assembly when he got involved in the Social Security Minister's climb down? And can he further inform the Assembly whether he got involved after the petition passed 2,000, 3,000 or 4,000 votes, and what role he played?
Chief Minister.
There has been no climb down, sir, by the Social Security Minister. What there has been is good constructive discussions, as there has been in the past, sir. I first became aware of the situation last year, as did other ministers. I was also pleased that arrangements were made to extend the funding till the end of April for the Jersey Employment Trust, so was surprised when they made the announcement as they did last week. And I can assure and reassure members that the Social Security Minister has been working extremely hard with the JET Board and officials, sir, to reach a resolution which has been announced this morning to the media, which members will see, sir. So we are in a good position with JET, so there's been no climb down, just an ongoing ambition to ensure we support them, sir. Make sure they are well resourced, make sure there is no duplication, make sure we're working closely together. So government services and JET services are complementary to each other and not competing with each other, sir. Thank you.
Parliamentary.
So not a climb down, but perhaps a retreat, a U-turn, a reverse ferret. The situation is that the Jersey Employment Trust were felt compelled to put all their staff on notice because of a potential change in their funding. The Social Security Minister attempted to defend that situation for a considerable, for a period of 3 days with repeated statements trying to justify it. Can the Chief Minister say whether he thinks this was good statecraft?
And once
Well,
again,
sorry, that question contravenes standing orders. The question must either seek information or ask for official action in relation to a matter. It's really a rhetorical question you're asking.
Can the Chief Minister then outline what advice he gave the Social Security Minister in this situation?
Chief Minister.
Well, so rather than give advice, we do what we always do. We sit around the table and we discuss how we find a resolution. And that culminated in a very positive meeting with the JET board late yesterday afternoon, where we collectively made constructive decisions to continue the support for JET in its current level, with a clear understanding and commitment from them to work closely with us to put together a business plan and a longer-term agreement to ensure they can continue, sir, well into the future. That's always been the Social Security Minister's intention, so that's what she's been committed to. It is always a bumpy ride because whether we like it or not, we all have a duty to make sure, in line with the Public Finance Manual, as I mentioned in an earlier answer, to ensure public funds are well spent. JET are aligned with that. They want nothing more than to ensure they're delivering good value for the island. So we're all aligned and we're going to move on, sir, and make it work.
Deputy War.
Thank you, sir. Given the public outcry over the cut in funding to JET and the misleading public statement when the Social Security Minister used the word overspend when in fact the term agreed top-up funding was the reality, given also the lack of any apology in her email to the Assembly and to the Assembly today, and the distress she has caused as she U-turned on her public statement, has the Chief Minister asked her to reflect upon her position?
So it's difficult to answer a question when I don't agree with any of the Deputy's rhetoric. So how do I respond to that, sir, when just about everything he said is untrue? I have full confidence in the Social Security Minister. I always had. She was doing her duty responsibly. I deeply regret any concern caused to staff and users of JET, and that's why, as do JET, I'm sure, and that's why we've worked collaboratively to resolve the situation.
Supplementary.
Sir, I mean, I'm quoting from the public record in the media, as which the Minister has said, but I am grateful for the Chief Minister for apologising. He's the first person to apologise in this Assembly for this debacle. So I have no further questions, sir. I'd just like to make that commentary.
Well, the purpose of asking a supplementary is to ask a question, not to make a statement. So in future, you must ask questions, not make statements. That's contravening standing orders. Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Does the Chief Minister agree with Dr McLaughlin, the Chief Executive of the Public Service, and his assessment to the Public Accounts Committee that Jersey's rising public expenditure is driven primarily by political policy decisions rather than departmental efficiencies? And how would he propose to address that challenge?
Chief Minister.
I do broadly agree with that. Our expenditure, all of our expenditure, is delivered through policy decisions and decisions of this Assembly. and we have allowed our expenditure to grow. Unintentionally, we have a number of unique and rare circumstances as we came out of COVID, geopolitical challenges and so forth. And this government has spent the last 2 years addressing that. It hasn't been a quick fix because, as I said before, it's like steering a very, very large ship. You turn the wheel and it takes a bit of time for the ship to react. We are now heading in the right direction. We have just approved a balanced budget. But to be clear, this Assembly and future governments must continue to bear down on the cost of running this island, control growth, control expenditure, and ensure that we operate not like a big country with hundreds of arm's length organisations and other bodies, sir, but in a way that's relevant to the size and the shape and the scope and the culture and the heritage of this island, sir.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir, and welcome the Chief Minister's view on that. So given what he's just said and how the need for fiscal restraint is being advanced by the Chief Executive as well as himself, does he accept that some laws in development and the implementation of new initiatives are actually diverting resources from maintaining essential services such as the ones like JET? And how is he ensuring Minister's policy ambitions are realistic and aligned with the island's fiscal capacity in light of the warnings that we have received from the Fiscal Policy Panel and the Chief Executive himself?
Chief Minister.
I think we're doing that, sir, by good prioritisation. And again, I refer to the previous budget where we've seen a compromise budget by all ministers, after a lengthy negotiation, have to prioritise how they spend in their departments. We have cut down on senior management roles. We've put the savings into frontline services, doctors, nurses, teachers. And we haven't compromised spending on charities, health, education. That's what our policy and strategy has been about, reducing the cost of at the centre of government and making sure our frontline services and the essential services, including the likes of what JET supply, are protected, sir. I mean, and that can be evidenced in the decision we've made this week, the Social Security Minister made this week, in continued support for JET, sir. So that is very much in our mind. It's our policy, sir, and I hope that continues, sir, because we need to restrict the expenditure. It's a matter of urgency in the years ahead.
Deputy Secretary.
So I'm sure the Chief Minister has been watching, like many of us, as global politics unfolds with increasing chaos and uncertainty, sir. Turning our attention to Greenland, which is a much larger island, of course, the largest island in the world, but not dissimilar to us constitutionally in other ways, which, although not an independent sovereign state, does have large levels of autonomy and is a self-governing country with its own constitutional kingdom, sir. Does the Chief Minister think it might be appropriate, and would he consider sending a message of solidarity to Greenland on behalf of Jersey's government with the current rhetoric and uncertainty that is going on within recent politics, sir?
Chief Minister. Thank you, sir. That is a matter that has been on my mind. I am completely in support of upholding international law in relation to the boundaries and borders of a country, and sometimes I can hardly believe what we hear coming from around the world at present, and that's a matter the External Relations Minister and I will discuss to make sure we are working in alignment with the UK. So the Prime Minister made a statement from Downing Street yesterday outlining some of the issues, opportunities and challenges that we're facing on the global stage, sir. I certainly would oppose any move by any country to move into another country without the backing of full international law, all the citizens of that country themselves, sir.
Supplementary.
I suppose the supplementary is I welcome that statement, but just to answer the question, would the Minister consider formally writing to the government of Greenland to say that as a similar small self-governing island, which I think would also never want to be put up for sale or offered to a NATO ally for sale, sir, or for acquisition, that there is that message of solidarity, sir.
Yes, sir, I certainly will consider doing that in consultation with the External Relations Minister and his team.
Colin Tarver, St Lawrence.
Sorry, sir, it was a binder matter there. I have all the papers for the debates this week.
Any other questions for the Chief Minister? Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. To follow on from some of my earlier questions about an ombudsperson, what is the Chief Minister's assessment of the current complaints handling processes by the Government of Jersey? And is he confident that it's delivering justice for the people of Jersey and value for money for taxpayers?
Chief Minister.
It's certainly delivering value for money because there's very little cost to it. I think it's, as I said before, I described it as adequate. I take nothing away from the people that give their time freely to do this important work, but it did need a review, and that's what Deputy Scott has done, sir. So, as I said before, I agree with the principle of moving forward to an ombudsperson. If the Assembly ultimately decide to stay with a complaints panel, it would have to be significantly enhanced, I think, given the level of challenges we face now in society, and to provide perhaps a broader platform for islanders to be able to have their complaints redressed. And that's why Deputy Scott has recommended, I think, move towards an ombudsperson, if we did go that way with quite a broad scope.
Supplementary?
Yes, and is the Chief Minister, the current complaints handling process, would the Chief Minister set out, does it meet international standards, and does he believe there are any risks to our international reputation as a result of the ongoing current processes?
International standards and international best practices will vary differently with every country. Like I say, we're not a big country, and I've mentioned before we tend to follow big country procedures, which is why we have all of these quite expensive arm's length organisations all doing very good work, but expanding significantly, sir. So I think whatever we come up with, it has to be appropriate to meet the challenges of our island and not stay focused on international best practice. We need to focus on what we need here, sir.
Any further questions for the Chief Minister? Deputy Breniff.
So following news that Logan Air were turned down for chance to run Jersey-Guernsey air routes, does the Chief Minister regret not being more open with Guernsey about the ongoing situation with Blue Islands, which might have meant that there was a greater collaboration between the islands in future travel links?
Chief Minister.
I have no regrets at all, sir, because I've never been not open with Guernsey. I enjoy a good relationship with my counterpart in Guernsey and the previous one. So when we were talking around the Blue Islands situation, we agreed that we would meet soon to discuss longer term, medium to long term aspirations with travel links. We are fully in agreement and committed that we have to do something to improve inter-island links, both on air and at sea. I was disappointed that the Guernsey Transport Authority decided not to provide a licence to Logan Air. I think it is a missed opportunity for both islands to deliver improved connectivity, sir. But I reiterate...
your time to an end, Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Before we start public business, a decision needs to be made about whether to reduce the minimum lodging period in respect of 3 matters listed on the order paper. First, Chair of the Committee, do you wish to make the proposition under Standing Order 26.7 that the lodging period be reduced to allow the draft Elections Jersey Amendment Number 2 law amendment to be debated at this sitting?
I do, sir, and I make that proposition.
Is the proposition seconded? Yes, sir. Does anyone wish to speak on the proposition? All those in favour kindly show. Thank you very much. The proposition is adopted. Next, Chair of the Committee, do you wish to make the same proposition under Standing Order 2067, the lodging period to be reduced to allow the draft alcohol licensing Jersey law amendment to be debated at this sitting?
I do so, and I make the proposition.
Is the proposition seconded? Yes, sir. Does anyone wish to speak on the proposition? Those in favour kindly show. Thank you. The proposition is adopted and the lodging period is reduced. Lastly, Minister for Treasury and Resources, do you wish to make the proposition under Standing Order 2087 that the lodging period be reduced to allow the draft Customs and Excise Amendment law to be debated at this sitting?
Yes, sir, I do. Thank you.
Is the proposition seconded?
Yes, sir.
Does anyone wish to speak on the proposition? All those in favour kindly show. Thank you. The proposition is adopted and the lodging period is accordingly reduced. The first item is End of Life Care P73, lodged by the Minister for Health and Social Services. The main respondent is the Chair of the Assisted Dying Review Panel. And I ask the greffier to read the proposition.
The states are asked to decide whether they are of opinion, A, to agree that the Minister for Health and Social Services should be required by law to provide for end-of-life services in Jersey, and B, to request the Minister for Health and Social Services to lodge the legislation necessary to give effect to that decision for consideration by the Assembly before the draft Assisted Dying Jersey Law 2000 comes into full force.
Minister.
Sir, I'm presenting this proposition in advance of the Assembly's consideration of the draft Assisted Dying Law. I do so because, as set out in P18 2024 proposals adopted by this Assembly, one of our core guiding principles is that assisted dying does not replace end-of-life care services. Assisted dying would be an additional choice that some people with a terminal illness may choose to make because they want more control over the manner and timing of their death. And any person seeking an assisted death should be making a real choice. This means they don't choose assisted dying on the basis that they cannot access or believe they cannot access high-quality end-of-life care. So this proposition seeks to ensure that the guiding principle is a legal reality. I'm asking the Assembly to agree that the Minister for Health and Social Services, whoever that may be, brings forward a new law which places them under a legal obligation to provide end-of-life care. Furthermore, the Minister will be required to ensure that legislation is lodged before any assisted dying law comes into force. So this is all about balance. If we legislate for assisted dying for the terminally ill, we will legislate for care for the terminally ill. Choice at the end of life and care at the end of life will both have legal weight. So it's been suggested by some that this proposition isn't actually necessary, that the legal duty to provide end-of-life care can be bolted on to the draft assisted dying law, and I'm afraid, sir, I disagree. Whilst such an approach may be considered less administratively complex, that doesn't make it the best option. In the combined approach, if the assisted dying law were to fall, then the duties related to end-of-life care would fall with it. What's more, we'd effectively have a joint assisted dying and end-of-life care law, and I know that some people would consider that unpalatable. So I acknowledge the recommendations made by the Assisted Dying Review Panel's expert advisors, and will give these, those that relate to end-of-life care, my full consideration in developing the proposed draft law and in the ongoing work to deliver Jersey's first end-of-life care strategy. I note that the scrutiny advisors recommend we clarify the scope of the proposed draft law, and to this end I've confirmed that the scope of the proposed end-of-life law is the palliative care and the care services provided those in the last year of their life. It's not the wider provision of palliative care services to all people. This corresponds with the Assembly's decision that assisted dying is limited to those with a terminal illness in the last year of their life. Whilst this proposition may have come about as a result of the developments in assisted dying, imposing a statutory duty to provide end-of-life care clearly has merit in its own right. We all want ourselves, our loved ones and our friends to receive good quality, compassionate care as we approach the end of life. And here in Jersey, we've been making significant progress in that respect. In 2023, this Assembly agreed an additional £3 million per year to improve palliative and end-of-life care. That investment has delivered real results, as evidenced in the report on the quality and availability of palliative care at the end of life that was published in the addendum to P65. The report highlights progress, such as the introduction of the Living Well team to bridge the gap between generalist and specialist care, a 24/7 helpline for health professionals, new education programs, and processes to reduce financial stress for those at the end of life. These improvements matter because they mean that the people in their final months can live in comfort and with dignity. Introducing a statutory duty to provide that care will cement the progress made to date. It will ensure that in Jersey, every person in their last 12 months of life can access the care they need, care that relieves suffering, supports family, and respects choice. In developing an end-of-life care law, we'll engage with the End-of-Life Care Partnership and other professional stakeholders, as well as consulting the public. We don't yet know what the proposed law will provide. That is still to be determined. It will need to set out the types of care and the standards of care. It will also provide choice to people at the end of their life, including where that care is provided, whether in their own home, care home, hospice, or at the hospital. It's envisaged that the law will provide for assessing the care needs of people approaching the end of their life, and mechanisms for appealing or challenging decisions made under the law will be considered during the consultation process. This law will enshrine what we know and believe, that every person deserves compassionate care at the end of their life. Financially, we've already committed resources. £3 million annual investment is in place, and this law will ensure that that commitment endures. This is very straightforward, sir, and it's the right thing to do. On that, sir, I move the proposition. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Is the proposition seconded? Yes, sir. Does anyone wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir, and I'm pleased to follow the Minister, and I thank him for lodging this proposition. This proposition obviously has a very close link to the assisted dying legislation, and indeed one of my panel's recommendations, I think it was actually the first recommendation that we made, and one of our key recommendations was that a plan demonstrating the quality and availability of end-of-life care should be published at least 2 months before the debate on assisted dying legislation. And the Minister has indeed fulfilled that recommendation. He accepted that recommendation, and he has completed that with the lodging of this proposition, which I think was lodged in October. And so I wanted to clarify, members will have read in the panel's comments that we did not come to a united stance for or against the policy direction and the form of this proposition. I want to emphasise that doesn't mean that we are emphatically for or emphatically against. It was simply that the panel are not taking a stance. However, the panel has extensively scrutinised this work, so I will set out the findings and to help members in their decision making today, and then I will take my scrutiny hat off at the end of my scrutiny speech and speak very briefly about my own view, sir, as I'm sure the other 2 members of my panel will do. So the statutory duty that would be established with the legislation is slightly, it's above and beyond other services in that it would provide a statutory duty, and I think that's perhaps one of the things that members should consider, that it's not provided in all areas of care for our health service. That's something that we discussed on scrutiny at length. We questioned the Minister in public hearings. We've had written correspondence with him, and our questions were answered, and we're grateful for that engagement from the Minister and from his officers.
So we have been very lucky to have 3 expert advisors for our assisted dying review, which I have to say I am really honoured to have those advisors, because the quality of the work and the advice and the academic expertise that they have given to our review has been astounding. I don't think I've ever worked with such intelligent and knowledgeable advisors, and they looked at this end-of-life care proposition and they raised no major concerns. It was slightly adjacent to the work that we had commissioned them to do, but nevertheless they did look at it and no major concerns were raised by our panel of 3 expert advisors. Some of the things that the panel notes about the proposition, and I think the Minister also highlighted this, that the needs, the delivery of care can be in any setting. I think that's important to note, because often there are strong feelings either way when people are at this stage of the end of their life, whether they want to be at home or in a healthcare setting. And this legislation would allow for delivery of care in home, hospital, hospice or residential care by the choice of the patient. And there is flexibility within it so that the framework can evolve with clinical practice. Some of the positive observations that the panel have noted: there is a thorough level of detail within this proposition and a real commitment to end-of-life care. It really aligns with our recommendations and with the principle of giving islanders real choice at the end of their life. That's a real positive for this proposition. There was thorough consultation with professionals and with the public, and the existing monitoring mechanisms, which are already, we felt, quite strong, include quarterly implementation reports, regular meetings with several providers, and a partnership group that has a voice and has good representation. So some real strengths there, sir. Some of the questions that we asked and concerns raised: the limitation and the scope of this is that it covers only end-of-life care. And we looked at the definition of end-of-life care versus palliative care, and what we understand is that end-of-life care is just the 12 months at the end of a patient's life, and wider palliative care can include a much longer time span than just the 12 months. And it was explained to us that the reason behind this is because this has flowed from the Assembly in Principle decision around assisted dying, and it mirrors that, because in our legislation for assisted dying, of course, you'd have to be 12 months terminal in order to access the assisted dying. So that has been mirrored as a legislative counterbalance in this proposition. However, we did have some questions about that and whether it should actually be extended to include a much wider length of time for palliative care. And also, as I mentioned, I think at the beginning of my speech, a legal duty for one form of healthcare being palliative or end-of-life care, but not others, for example, cancer treatment. And there were concerns raised on the panel about maybe some unfairness around that and inconsistency. That it would be good if the Minister could address that when he sums up, please. And I think that would help members when it comes to voting. Also, some uncertainties about any future extension of assisted dying eligibility, how this kind of counterbalance service would also be extended. So that's, again, I would welcome the Minister responding to that point. We had some concerns about equitable access across all care settings, which, again, I would like the Minister to speak to this and give some reassurance, if he can, to the Assembly that there would be the same rights to access this care, whichever setting the patient is in, and how that will be guaranteed going forwards. Appeals and dispute resolution. The panel's understanding is that it is the intention of the Minister to address this after the vote today, so some more detail on that also would be helpful. And
again, I think the Minister mentioned this in his opening speech, that he's aware that some members might feel that this is too much and that it could have been included in the assisted dying legislation. And yeah, we did indeed discuss that amongst the panel. We didn't reach a collective conclusion, and members do hold differing views on what the most efficient legislative mechanism would be for this law. But in conclusion, on the panel evidence, sir, our scrutiny has highlighted clear strengths in this proposition, some areas that require some further development, I think, during the drafting of the law, which the Minister may wish to speak to when he sums up around equitable access and how the law might flex in the future. And I hope that members will consider those points when they consider how they're voting today. And so I'm going to take my scrutiny hat off now. And as somebody who, outside of my scrutiny work, for my personal views, I am in favour of assisted dying legislation, but with appropriate safeguards. I do feel that this end-of-life care proposition provides one of those strong safeguards. And for me, it does provide that patient choice that gives a real choice. And I can see why there have been some concerns raised over why are other areas of healthcare not statutory, and we would like to have this one as a statutory provision. And I think the reason for that is because we're debating an assisted dying legislation, and because we are an assembly that is very keen on the safeguards and on the choice and having that real choice, and for me, having it on a statutory level ensures and guarantees that that real choice is there. So I will be voting for this today. And one more thing that I did want to say before I sat down is when we have been discussing this on the panel, and indeed when I've been considering it myself and doing my own research, and several real life examples we read about them, we hear about them from people, and I think it's really important that we don't just think about the legislation and the high level, the kind of wordy aspect of things, but I want members to think about the human aspect of this legislation. And I want to pay tribute to the people who are delivering this end-of-life care, because that is quietly happening right now here in our island. And I believe that most of the people involved in that care have been able to have a say, and there are mechanisms whereby they can do that, but they aren't in this assembly today. So I wanted to thank them and to send that message that we see the work that they are doing, and it's hugely valuable, and it will continue to be so however this assembly votes on assisted dying, and whether we do have an assisted dying service implemented, that end of life and palliative care will continue to be hugely important, and I hope recognises the extremely valuable and honourable service that it is.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Jeune.
Thank you, sir. I will be short, and there's many points that the panel chair said that I will be repeating, but as someone who's not in the review panel, I thought it was important to also say from my own point of view, I believe that a high quality and well-funded palliative and end-of-life care is essential, regardless of the outcome of the vote or details of the assisted dying legislation. I think we do need to think of it in a way as separate at this precise moment, because it is extremely important. And I've consistently been arguing for it when we've been debating or questioning the Minister or voting on the direction of Jersey could take on assisted dying, that we do need to have high quality, well-funded palliative and end-of-life care, regardless of the vote or the outcome of the assisted dying legislation. Because for me, the central issue is choice. Any person considering an assisted death must be making a genuine informed choice, and not a decision driven by what they cannot access or believe they cannot access in terms of palliative or end-of-life care. If high quality care is not available or visible, then choice is compromised. That is why during our debate on assisted dying in May 2024, I strongly supported the recommendation 1 of the review panel, which the Chair has talked about, which called for a clear and robust plan to evidence the quality, availability and consistency of palliative and end-of-life care in Jersey. And I welcome the fact that this recommendation has now been taken forward, though only at the moment focusing on end-of-life care. And I'm also grateful for the Minister for meeting with me specifically to discuss my own concerns and the clear red line I set out in relation to this issue ahead of the lodging of this proposition. And I'm pleased that this draft law will place a statutory duty on the Minister of Health and Social Services. This is a significant step, and it reinforces the principle that support for living well until death must sit alongside any provision for assisted dying. But looking ahead, and I return to the question I asked the Minister earlier, I remain concerned that the Minister does not currently hold a clear statutory duty to ensure the provision of appropriate treatments and services across all health and care settings, a gap explicitly highlighted by the review panel and the Chair recently. And therefore, I welcome the Minister's response to my earlier question, in which he indicated a willingness to discuss this issue further with me. And I look forward to progressing work on whether a wider statutory duty for health and care provision in Jersey should be established. And I believe that this should be of urgent need and necessity in moving forward with or without a gap this year. In that, I think it's important to put that type of work on the agenda, and that we really think in Jersey that it's time that we do have that wider statutory duty for the Minister to provide all health and care support in Jersey. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Bailiff.
Sir, I am in complete agreement with the two previous speakers that the principle underlying Projet 73, that is that the Minister should be bound by law to ensure that palliative care is available to anyone in Jersey who seeks it. The Minister puts it quite correctly at paragraph 8 of his report. It is an important principle that any person seeking an assisted death should be making a real choice, i.e. no person should choose an assisted death on the basis that they cannot access or believe they cannot access high-quality end-of-life care services. Where I part company with the Minister, sir, is that I believe that that end can be much more simply achieved by an amendment to the assisted dying law, which is one of the amendments that the assisted dying scrutiny panel, or perhaps I personally, will be putting forward to the assisted dying law. I do not agree with the statement at paragraph 11 of the Minister's report that it would be procedurally difficult for the Assembly to deal with two matters in one law. The fact that this amendment has not yet been lodged is one small example of why we should not be debating the principles of the assisted dying law today. And I give notice to the Minister that I will be proposing, with your leave, sir, that the assisted dying debate be postponed to the 24th of February. The amendment will be an amendment to Article 102 of the assisted dying law, which is the law, the article dealing with the coming into force of the law. And it would create a legal obligation for the Minister to make a statement to the Assembly that he is satisfied that proper end-of-life care provided by suitably qualified healthcare professionals is available in Jersey. And if that amendment is adopted, the bulk of the law cannot come into force until the Minister has made the statement. But the Minister has already conceded that he wants the principle to be established before the law comes into force. It's as simple as that. We all want, I think, the Minister to be sure that end-of-life care is available to people who have not more than 12 months to live. If he commits to that by making a statement to the Assembly, that is frankly all that we need. We will not then have the considerable expense and bureaucratic effort involved in planning, drafting, and debating a whole separate new law. If members will look at paragraph 15 of the Minister's report, there is set out there everything that must be done if there is a separate law. Apart from the law itself, at least 3 different ministerial orders will have to be made. But imagine the civil service time involved in arranging for the identification of people approaching the end of life, assessing their care needs, specifying the type and standard of care to be provided, and the people whom the Minister must consult before doing so. None of that is necessary. If palliative care is available for people to access, it will all happen naturally without huge bureaucratic effort and giving unnecessary work to civil servants. Once we start legislating to place a duty on the Health Minister in regard to palliative care, why not about mental health or ADHD or any other aspect of health for which the Minister is responsible? So this is not a technical or legalistic point. We do need in future to think seriously about how our services are going to be provided and to choose the simplest and easiest way of doing it. If we don't, we will eventually choke on our own bureaucracy. So I hope that the Minister will allow separate votes on paragraphs A and B. I would support paragraph A for obvious reasons, but I would not support paragraph B.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Catherine Curtis.
Thank you, sir. While I appreciate some of the comments made by Deputy Bailiff, I can say as Vice Chair of the Assisted Dying Review Panel that I do support this end-of-life care proposition. It may not be perfect, but it does provide a way forward. This proposition aims to give people the right to access high-quality end-of-life care, and access to this care needs to be in place before the commencement of the assisted dying service, and so therefore I will be supporting the proposition.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Tadia.
So, whilst this hasn't been an area that I've been involved with from a scrutiny panel, I have been following the debate and the progress closely, and I know that there's a lot of work gone into that, both from the Minister and from the bespoke scrutiny panel that's been involved with it. And I think early on, it's important to put my thanks and recognition on record for that, sir, because the Minister, on the one hand, who routinely comes under a lot of fire in this Assembly, I'm not going to say rightly or wrongly, in this case, I think it's got to be acknowledged that there have been so many drop-in sessions that have been organised for States members and other consultation, which none of us can feel that we haven't had the opportunity to either be briefed or to have direct input into this very important area. And the same goes for Deputy Dublay's panel and the work that's been going on with that, sir. I for one, think it is really important that we have 2 separate laws here. And I think I am concerned by some of the comments made by Deputy Ballash, which seem to focus on the cost and administration when actually we need to look at the underlying principles here. And giving people who are in a situation where they know pretty much for sure that they're going to die within the next 12 months for a whole number of reasons, that they will have a statutory right to be provided for and certainty as to what their care package may look like in the last year of their life. It isn't something which we should see through the lens of bureaucracy and cost to government, but actually about the value that that can bring and the assurance that it can also bring. I think we have to remember that this is going to apply to a very select group of people who may not even avail themselves of this statutory duty of care that the government has. And I think on the one hand, we accept, I think, instinctively that government and the state has some kind of duty of care in early years provision. What we're talking about here could be seen as late years provision. Most of us, I think, won't necessarily know when we're going to die. It's not something we would necessarily want to know either. But for some people, they are delivered information which can come as a very serious blow to them, that in a number of months, that their whole world is potentially going to come crashing down, and their immediate thoughts are going to be with their family, what do I do about that? And of course, sometimes lower down the pecking order, their thoughts will turn to, well, what about me? What does my care package look like? And the other point I'd make is that these two pieces of law are not mutually exclusive. There are those who will want to have avail themselves of a palliative care package initially, but also who will want to have the option for assisted dying. They may even be planning to use both. They may actually need one or neither of those. And I think it's really important that the two are kept separate. And so whilst we're not here to debate the potential amendment that might be coming down the line, I think it is important to keep these two projects separate. If only, I suppose, for psychological purposes. If you're somebody who is rightly campaigning for better palliative care, but you don't necessarily believe in the underlying principle of assisted dying, sir, how would it look if the only statutory access you've got to palliative care comes through an amendment to a bill that you fundamentally disagree with? I think psychologically, politically, that is a very messy situation to be in. And whilst it might be the case that this statutory provision that we're debating today has only come around or because of the desire for assisted dying, I think the value of the law stands on its own 2 feet, sir. I think irrespective of whether we have assisted dying, we do need this provision, and it does need to be a statutory obligation. And there also remains, of course, the option that members in this Assembly may ultimately decide to vote against assisted dying. I hope that doesn't happen. I think we've come on too far. But if that were to happen, I think we also need to make sure that palliative care in itself is supported. And I think this proposition, with the correct scrutiny it's had, is the way to do that, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. I'm mindful of the time, but it's an important issue. And I just wanted to rise and speak in support of the proposition, which seeks to place a clear statutory duty on the Minister and of Health and Social Services to ensure that the provision of comprehensive end-of-life care services in Jersey. So this is, I believe, a measured and a thoughtful proposition. And I know a lot of thought has gone into it from the Minister and his team. So I think it's grounded in compassion, sir, dignity, and I think it is also good governance. It recognises that end-of-life care is not a peripheral aspect of our health service, but a core responsibility, one that affects not only patients, but families, carers, and our wider community. By supporting this proposition, sir, the Assembly would be making a clear statement that islanders approaching the end of life are entitled to consistent, high-quality palliative and supportive care, and that such care should be underpinned by firm legislation, a legislative commitment, rather than relying solely on policy or goodwill. Importantly, sir, the proposition does not seek to dictate clinical practice. It rightly respects the expertise of the health professionals. Instead, it provides clarity of responsibility and accountability, ensuring that the planning and delivery of these services remain a priority now and into the future, sir. I think it's particularly important as our population ages and the demand continues to grow. For these reasons, sir, I believe we should support proposition. It represents a sensible and compassionate and necessary step forward, sir. And I commend the Minister for bringing it. Thank you. And I won't quite oppose the adjournment.
Do you propose the adjournment? We can carry on if...
Are there any other speakers, sir?
Yes, Comment Officer Brillard.
Thank you, sir. I won't take too long. First of all, I would declare an interest as Chair of the Management Committee of Mézec and Brillard, which provides palliative care as and when necessary. To that end, sir, I'm supportive of the proposition, but what isn't clear to me is what the consequential costs to the providers might be. And I would ask the Minister in his summing up to outline what they might be, if he in fact knows, because the effect of putting up costs, which is often the case when government has an involvement in private business, is that the cost gets passed to the end user. And that's something I'm very conscious of. The charges to residents in any care home is high enough already, and we need to be cognizant of the effect that this might be. So I look forward to hearing the response from the Minister. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Perhaps at this point I could propose the adjournment.
Adjournment proposed. Are members content to adjourn now? Assembly is adjourned until 2:15.